Lu Sheng, having launched nearly 1,000 attacks, was already familiar with the defensive capabilities of the Grandmaster-level zombie. After a few more attempts, he unexpectedly discovered a slight weakening in the invisible force field surrounding the Grandmaster zombie's body. Lu Sheng could feel his stamina rapidly depleting, and a sense of retreat began to rise within him. However, there was also a hint of unwillingness. The level 6 zombies no longer held much value for him in terms of honing his combat skills. Having reached level 3 in his psychic prowess, hunting zombies below level 6 was as effortless as mowing the grass. A single sweep could clear out a dozen. Wait! A sudden realization dawned on Lu Sheng. Psychic strength. Yes, a psychic attack. He had yet to attempt it, to directly assault using his psychic abilities. Lu Sheng had never truly studied the combat techniques of a psychic practitioner, always treating his psychic strength as a secondary support tool. In comparison to his martial prowess, his power in the realm of psychic practitioner was much stronger. As this realization dawned on him, Lu Sheng felt a sudden clarity. His eyes gleamed, and the more he thought about it, the more feasible this approach seemed. With determination, Lu Sheng condensed his spiritual strength into a cohesive force and struck fiercely at the Grandmaster-level zombie before him. Just like a physical attack, the moment his psychic strength made contact with the Grandmaster zombie, it encountered an invisible barrier. However, simultaneously, a portion of that invisible barrier was depleted. Startled yet overjoyed, Lu Sheng quickly grasped the situation. The Grandmaster's force field was an external manifestation of their willpower, which, essentially, was their psychic strength at the Grandmaster level. Without further delay, Lu Sheng swiftly manipulated his psychic strength, repeatedly assaulting the force field of the Grandmaster-level zombie. The Grandmaster's force field rapidly diminished as it consumed energy, thinning at a perceptible speed to Lu Sheng's constant attacks. With each usage of his psychic strength, Lu Sheng grew more proficient in this straightforward and aggressive technique. Moreover, he could sense that his psychic attacks grew stronger with each attempt. At this moment, the Grandmaster-level zombie appeared significantly weakened compared to its initial state, according to Lu Sheng's perception. The Divine Pluto technique surged within Lu Sheng, amplifying his blood energy level. 2 hearts thumped in his body as his blood energy level roared. Alongside with tenfold stellar technique, switching to the flame-breathing technique, perfect fist technique. Radiant light blossomed in Lu Sheng's eyes as he raised his right fist high. With great force, he struck the head of the Grandmaster-level zombie with all his might, finally penetrating its invisible barrier. The Grandmaster's not-so-sturdy body swayed and staggered backward under the impact of Lu Sheng's punch. A hint of guilt rose in Lu Sheng's heart. Throughout the entire encounter, the Grandmaster-level zombie hadn't attacked him even once. It was always Lu Sheng who initiated the attacks. "The spirit lives on. I shall inherit your will," Lu Sheng silently recited in his mind. The Grandmaster-level zombie, seemingly relieved, gave him a smile. Then its body rapidly decayed, and a thick black line of smoke emerged from its body. Like a black python, it viciously crashed into Lu Sheng's body. Memories flew into Lu Sheng's mind. "Shi Sheng Ning, congratulations on reaching level 7. From this day forward, you may be hailed as a Grandmaster. The situation is worsening. Despite the efforts of the Stellar Realm Elders running around tirelessly, more and more bases are falling. Base number 100, located at the center of the martial art associations, is the safest place in the world. I have arranged for an aircraft. You will depart this afternoon." "Dad, aren't you coming with us?" a young girl said. He gently smiled and said, "As a Grandmaster, I must stay at the forefront and fight until the last drop of blood for the human race." Despite being a level 7 Grandmaster, witnessing a level 9 monster filled him with fear and dread. Suddenly, a man defeated the level 9 beast with a single punch. That man was Wang He. Shi Sheng Ning comprehended a completely new martial technique from Wang He's attack. Just when he thought he could aspire to reach the realm of an level 8 Grandmaster in his lifetime, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. His heart had been ripped out. He felt cold. He felt pain. Was this the sensation of death approaching? It is said that the Martial Art Association has initiated the Fire Seed Plan, gathering the collective strength of the entire human race to create an unprecedented Level 12 powerhouse. Hopefully they will succeed. Unfortunately, he won't be able to witness it anymore. The amount of memories absorbed by Lu Sheng surpassed any previous instance. Countless fragmented scenes flashed rapidly through his mind. The life of this Grandmaster, what a legendary and splendid existence he was. A wealth of martial experiences and combat skills flooded Lu Sheng's mind, which he quickly assimilated. Lu Sheng was fortunate because the Grandmaster named Shi Shengning had specialized in fist techniques during his lifetime. His skills and combat experiences gradually merged into Lu Sheng's body, becoming a part of his being, the lifelong learning of the Grandmaster Shi Shengning. This rapid assimilation propelled his advancement. The mastery of combat techniques, honed through countless life-and-death battles against the monsters, was now flawlessly inherited by Lu Sheng. Wang He. Lu Sheng captured this name within Shi Shengning's memories. It seemed to hold significant importance to Shi Shengning. In the final memories of Shi Shengning's Grandmaster life, aside from his wife and children, this name was mentioned the most. And coincidentally, Lu Sheng knew this name. The creator of the stellar body refining technique is named Wang He. Shi Shengning seems to have been inspired by witnessing Wang He's martial prowess and created an extremely powerful martial art. But why can't he find it? Lu Sheng was puzzled, continuously searching through Shi Shengning's memories. Just then, he noticed a golden dot appearing within the memory fragments. In an instant, a memory scene that Lu Sheng had never seen before unfolded in his mind. It was a vast, desolate wilderness. Thick black mist permeated the surroundings. Countless indiscernible beasts and monsters surged out from the earth and sky, tearing through the black mist. A profound sense of despair enveloped Lu Sheng's heart. At that moment, a figure suddenly appeared in his field of vision. This figure moved at an incredible speed, radiating brilliant golden light, akin to the rising sun. 10 suns simultaneously appeared in the dim sky. Incredibly dazzling suns, golden suns. Boundless golden radiance illuminated everything, causing tears to flow from Lu Sheng's eyes. He struggled to widen his eyes, but could only see a sea of golden light. It was unknown how much time had passed. The golden light gradually faded, and Lu Sheng's vision returned. He saw that the countless beasts that had previously covered the sky and the pervasive black mist had all vanished. The entire world appeared empty and desolate. As the 10 suns appeared simultaneously in the sky, rivers dried up, the earth cracked, and infinite light and heat burned everything. Grandmaster Shi Shengning exhausted his lifetime of talent and painstakingly studied, pouring his heart and soul into it, even with the intention of reaching the pinnacle of the 8th level Grandmaster. The supreme technique he sought to achieve was called the 10 suns in the sky. Back home, Lu Sheng felt that there had been a qualitative change in his psychic power. If Ling's psychic power was like air and Snowy's was like water, then Lu Sheng's felt like a solid steel ball. Both in terms of mass and hardness, it was much stronger. While experimenting with his latest psychic power, he accidentally lifted a nearby tall building. Cold sweat streamed down his face as people inside the building panicked and fled. How did it float up? Lu Sheng awkwardly set the building back down. He felt as if he had broken through a certain level and was no longer an ordinary martial artist. He was confident that with the oppressive force of his psychic power alone, he could kill a 3rd or even 4th level martial artist just by stare at them. Additionally, a faint aura of a force field appeared around him. Of course, it was weak and faint. If the force field of the previous Grand Master zombie was an ostrich egg, then his was an ordinary chicken egg. Although it was currently just a seed, it would eventually grow into a towering tree. Lu Sheng sat in his seat at the restaurant, eagerly awaiting his meeting with the person in charge of the pharmacy. Since leaving the training camp, he had been deprived of his daily supply of exotic beast meat, and he was in desperate need of supplements to assist in his cultivation. Soon enough, a breathless woman hurriedly ran over. She had been anxious all along, as she had been waiting for this day for a long time. She had thought that all hope was lost. However, there was a glimmer of hope as the situation took a turn. Surprisingly, the other party took the initiative to propose a collaboration with her. Upon seeing only a young student in the room, she breathed a sigh of relief. If it was just Lu Sheng, a high school student, then it would be easier to handle. She was confident that they could successfully reach a collaboration in her favor. Upon seeing the arrival of Healing Su, Lu Sheng's expression remained unchanged. He gestured for her to take a seat and picked up the menu to order. As she contemplated how to begin the conversation, she heard the young man across from her ask the server who had been following them, "What is the best quality steak you have?" After the waitress finished her introduction, Lu Sheng ordered 40 servings, all medium rare. Ling Su choked for a moment and deliberately glanced at him. Was he a pig? He wanted to eat 40 servings of steak in one go. Each serving cost 1,280, so 40 servings would amount to 51,200. Ling Su quickly calculated the amount in her mind and felt a twinge of pain. However, she reassured herself that considering he was eating so much, he probably wouldn't feel comfortable letting her take the bill. Lu Sheng held the menu and asked if Ling Su wanted to join him, but she shook her head. They hadn't even started discussing the matter, so she had no appetite. Seeing that Lu Sheng made no further moves, Ling Su collected her thoughts and prepared to speak. But before she could, Lu Sheng began talking about her information, including his ancestral background. In the decades when martial arts were just emerging, her ancestor became a 5th-level pharmacist with his impressive martial talent and exceptional pharmaceutical skills, establishing the benevolent pharmacy. The benevolent pharmacy enjoyed some success in its early years, with branches spread across more than 20 cities in the Dongning province. Unfortunately, due to poor management, it rapidly declined during the generation of her father. Ling Su's face darkened, and she sarcastically interjected, "Mr. Lu, you start off by reciting a lengthy piece of information that anyone can easily find online. What exactly are you trying to convey?" She thought Lu Sheng wanted to show off his astonishing memory. Soon enough, Lu Sheng's 40 servings of steak arrived, filling the entire table. He ate while divulging more details about Ling Su. He mentioned that her mother hadn't returned to the Dongning province for 20 years due to family reasons, and had never visited her daughter. Regarding the swift rise of the benevolent pharmacy, besides the outdated concepts and poor management, the most significant reason was the covert suppression from his mother's Chen family over the years. Ling Su was deeply shocked, so much so that she accidentally knocked over the glass of lemon water on the table in front of her. She stared intensely into Lu Sheng's eyes, her expression turning into anger. She demanded evidence for his claims, but Lu Sheng looked at her and told her to ask her father when she returned home. Then she would know. Lu Sheng remained silent and focused on eating the steak in front of him. For Lu Sheng, the taste of the steak didn't matter. What he cared about was the quality of the meat. Good meat meant high nutritional value, providing him with more energy for his martial arts cultivation. Meanwhile, Ling Su was caught in deep shock and confusion. There were many things about her mother that she didn't even know. However, it was true that her mother had left when she was 2 years old. When she was younger, Ling Su had often complained in her heart about her mother being too heartless. Even after the divorce, why hadn't her mother visited her even once while she lived with her father? It was also true that their family pharmacy had started declining after her mother's departure. These doubts buried deep in her memory had almost been forgotten. Now, with Lu Sheng's words, they were connecting in a way that evoked a sense of terrifying contemplation. Lu Sheng finished the last piece of steak and looked at the girl across from him. By observing Ling Su's expression, he knew that she had already believed most of it. All this information was obtained by Lu Sheng from the resource library in his dream realm. It had to be said that the dream realm's resource library was indeed powerful. In the thick volumes of history, a person or a family could be summarized in a single sentence or even a punctuation mark. Ling Su took a deep breath, struggling to calm her turbulent inner thoughts. She now wanted to discuss the collaboration. Lu Sheng cut to the chase and proposed his terms. He would be responsible for providing the prescriptions and technical guidance, while the pharmacy would handle production and sales. In the end, Lu Sheng would take 90% of the profits, leaving Ling Su nearly jumping out of her chair. She couldn't help but scoff. "Why not ask for it all, Mr. Lu?" Lu Sheng smiled and replied, "I thought about it, but I was afraid you wouldn't agree." Ling Su's boing heaved with anger. After taking a few deep breaths, she offered a maximum of 70%. Lu Sheng smiled faintly and said that an additional 20% was necessary because he would help her deal with some troubles. Perplexed, Ling Su asked what troubles he was referring to. Lu Sheng stood up, looked at her, and asked if she had no thoughts about seeking revenge after being manipulated by the Chen family for so many years. Lu Sheng clenched his fists and stared at Ling Su, questioning whether she wanted to retaliate and reclaim everything that belonged to her. Ling Su was stunned, unsure of what Lu Sheng intended to do. However, Lu Sheng's voice and actions seemed to possess a special kind of charm, causing her gaze to involuntarily follow. The next moment, Ling Su saw it. The spilled lemon water on the table began to levitate. Droplet by droplet, Ling Su's eyes widened in astonishment, instinctively wanting to cry out in surprise. She was not an ignorant woman. She quickly realized that Lu Sheng was a psychic master, and even though she wasn't a martial arts practitioner, she understood the significance of such a qualification. Before leaving, Lu Sheng mentioned that by demanding a larger share of the profits, she would gain the support of him and the power behind him. Wasn't there a more profitable business than this in the world? Ling Su's facial expression rapidly changed. If everything Lu Sheng said was true, then sooner or later she would have to face the members of the Chen family, even if she had no grievances or desire for revenge regarding the past 20 years. However, the other party may not be willing to let her go so easily. After a moment of deliberation, Ling Su finally made up her mind. She agreed to give 90% to Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng smiled and then took out a USB from his pocket, handing it to Ling Su. He then left the room, leaving Ling Su staring blankly at his departing figure, dazed for quite some time. The realization that despite all her careful preparations, she ended up giving away 90% of the benefits, left her with a sense of disbelief. It was completely different from what she had anticipated. "Excuse me, miss?" A person's call interrupted Ling Su's train of thought. Ling Su looked up and saw a waitress from the restaurant standing in front of her. "Can I close the bill?" the waitress asked. Ling Su was taken aback, but quickly understood that Lu Sheng wanted her to pay the bill. Although she felt a bit annoyed, Ling Su still nodded and asked how much it was. The waitress glanced at the bill and replied, "The total is 115,200, but willing round it down to 115,000. The waitress patiently explained, "The steaks were 1,280 each, but the gentleman ordered a total of 90 portions. 90 portions. Where did the other 50 come from? He only ate 40, and he said he was full. He also packed 50 portions to take home for his family to try," the waitress replied. Ling Su's mouth dropped open and she stood there motionless, unable to move. Then, her breathing became rapid, her boing heaving up and down rapidly, and it felt as if there were animated flames burning behind her as she pulled out her card. Lu Sheng happily returned home, carrying a total of 50 neatly packaged premium steaks. He had obtained everything he desired and even exceeded his expectations. Originally, Lu Sheng aimed for an 80% benefit and shouted for 90%. However, to his surprise, with his persuasive tactics and strategies, Ling Su actually agreed. Not to mention, before leaving, he even managed to mooch a whole family bucket of steak from her. Strolling leisurely back home, it was already close to 4 p.m. His mother had finished work early and was busy preparing dinner at home. As soon as Lu Sheng entered the door, his mother caught a whiff of a tantalizing meat fragrance and followed it from the kitchen to the living room. Lushing placed the packed boxes on the table and smiled, saying there was no need to cook today. Hearing that it was a premium steak, his mother's face lit up with a mixture of heartache. Lushing casually mentioned that a friend had treated him dinner and offered him takeout, and that friend happened to be a wealthy individual. It's hard to say what Ling Su, who had just walked out of the restaurant after maxing out her credit card, would feel upon hearing those words. Upon hearing that, his mother's expression immediately relaxed, and she informed Lu Sheng that Mr. Zhong had come to inquire about their family several times. Lu Sheng pondered for a moment, realizing that he hadn't been to school in a long time. He decided to pay a visit tomorrow. The next day, Lu Sheng, after a long absence, returned to the school. When Mr. Zhong heard a knock on the door and opened it, he was pleasantly surprised to find Lu Sheng standing there. Lu Sheng held a potted plant as he entered the office. It was the one he accidentally broke last time. Mr. Zhong could sense a remarkable change in Lu Sheng's aura, exuding an incredible strength. Mr. Zhong handed Lu Sheng a cup of tea while he lit a cigarette and sighed, remarking that after this meeting, perhaps in the future, they would only be able to see Lu Sheng on television. When asked about his future plans, Lu Sheng calmly stated that he was going to participate in the selection for rising military stars. This statement left Mr. Zhong so astonished that he dropped his cigarette. Lu Sheng added that he will also be attending the assessment to become a psychic practitioner. Mr. Zhong jumped up from the couch, covering his forehead with his hand. He didn't know what to say, but he enthusiastically patted Lu Sheng's shoulder and told him to go and conquer his own world. He promised to support and cheer for him from behind. As Lu Sheng left the office, Mr. Zhong watched his figure and realized that he had underestimated him all along. Lu Sheng was not only the school's pride, but also the pride of White Lake City. He would one day become the pride of the entire human race. With the final exams approaching, boredom filled the air in Class 3, 2. The mundane academic subjects made many students feel drowsy, and some even played mobile games discreetly. The class teacher shook his head disapprovingly at the sleeping students and slammed his book on the desk, commanding everyone's attention. He tapped on the blackboard, knowing that many students were aspiring to attend martial art university, but their grades in academic subjects were equally important. He had already lectured them on this countless times, but some students simply didn't care. One student yawned and asked Ming if he could go play League of Legends after school. Ming shook his head and refused, as he had enrolled in an intensive study program and planned to study after school. The student couldn't understand why Ming had been working so hard lately. The teacher noticed them whispering and asked them to stand up just as he was about to give them a lecture. However, at that moment, Lu Sheng walked into the classroom. Lu Sheng greeted the teacher first, and then greeted his classmates. The entire class was astonished, never expecting Lu Sheng to come back for class. Many believed they would never see him again. There were even rumors circulating that Lu Sheng had become the closed-door disciple of Chairman Xiao, or that the mayor's daughter was going to marry him. Some students even rushed to ask for his autograph. Ming was also shocked, and the class teacher looked at Lu Sheng, hastily returning the greeting. Lu Sheng, on the other hand, didn't hold any grudges from the past when the class teacher had looked down on him and ridiculed him in the classroom. He politely asked if he could join the final lecture class. The class teacher quickly agreed, and as Lu Sheng walked into the classroom, everyone suddenly found a renewed motivation for studying. The atmosphere completely changed. The class teacher delivered an engaging lecture, and the students listened attentively. It was incredible to think that they could attend class together with Lu Sheng. Ming stared at the back of his former friend, reminiscing about the times they used to play together, stay up late playing League of Legends, and go to internet cafes. The distance between them seemed to have grown over time. Lu Sheng's aura was different now, as if he possessed the presence of a leader. Soon, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. The class teacher closed his books, and it was the first time in many years that he had delivered such a powerful lecture. Lu Sheng also stood up and bid farewell to his classmates, assuring them that he would never forget them. Upon hearing these words, the students in the class suddenly felt the urge to cry. A strong sense of honor emerged from within them, and they vowed to get into martial art university. Lu Sheng turned to Ming, placing his arm on Ming's shoulder, just like a few months ago. He gave him a nudge, as if nothing had changed. The former class teacher and classmates had all looked down on Lu Sheng, except for Ming, who genuinely regarded him as a friend. Thinking about this, Lu Sheng encouraged Ming, telling him to keep up the good work and that they should play League of Legends together whenever they had the chance. Ming's eyes welled up with tears, deeply moved. He made a firm decision to strive for excellence and work hard to get into a martial art university, following in the footsteps of his best friend. Seated at his desk, Lu Sheng contemplated his next plan while staring at the computer in front of him. This computer had been a gift from his father on his 10th birthday, and he had been using it ever since. Its specs were outdated, and it ran frustratingly slow. Lu Sheng had already informed Snowy about purchasing materials and upgrading his gear. Now, he needed to focus on acquiring a psychic practitioner's weapon. He opened Snowy's email, which presented him with two options: the indomitable Wheel of Blades and the Silver Void Shuttle. 5 minutes later, Lu Sheng's expression turned somewhat disappointed. Both weapons cost between 30 to 40 million. He closed his eyes and began calculating the required materials for crafting the weapons. Considering the significant amount of primary material, mithril needed for both the wheel and shuttle, approximately 9,000 per gram. A single wheel alone would weigh over half a kilo. That was already over 5 million spent, and he hadn't even accounted for the other auxiliary materials yet. After conducting the calculations, Lu Sheng realized that he couldn't even afford to craft a single item, let alone a complete set of psychic gears. With no other option, he decided he would have to go out and dig for materials himself. Previously, Lu Sheng had found a strategic resource distribution map for materials in the Dream Realm Library, spanning 300 years. It would come in handy now. His first step would be to unearth the unexplored mithril mines, and then he could take the materials to a blacksmith for weapon crafting. If he managed to acquire a substantial amount of mithril or iron, he could even sell some to earn money. A win-win situation. A week later. In the lab of the laboratory, Ling Su stood anxiously at the door, glancing at her phone from time to time. She had lost track of how long she had been waiting when suddenly her spirits lifted, and her posture straightened unconsciously. Lu Sheng's figure appeared at the door. Lu Sheng, dressed in a pristine white pharmacist robe, stood tall with a calm expression. His increasingly handsome features were accentuated by the pharmacist attire, exuding a cool and disciplined charm. Although Ling Su was well aware that Lu Sheng was 5 years younger than her, she couldn't help but feel a flutter of attraction. Snapping back to reality, Ling Su quickly spoke to hide the slight blush on her cheeks. The materials for this batch cost nearly 200,000, and Lu Sheng seemed satisfied with the quality. After putting on a mask, he asked Ling Su to wait him outside. Deep inside, Ling Su couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness. The launch and sales of the new supplements hadn't even begun, and the profits were still uncertain. In this past week alone, she had already spent close to 1 million just to front the funds for Lu Sheng. 3 hours later, the refining process was complete. Lu Sheng seemed to sense Ling Su's slight emotional state and casually reassured her, mentioning that he would be going out. If all went well, he would have the startup funds, and he promised to send her the money. Ling Su nodded obediently, refraining from asking about Lu Sheng's specific plans. Before leaving, Lu Sheng smiled and remarked that she was quite a tsundere. He bid Ling Su farewell and quickly walked away. As soon as Lu Sheng's figure was no longer in sight, Ling Su took a deep breath and swiftly rushed into the laboratory. The air in the laboratory still carried a faint scent of herbs. Ling Su's eyes scanned the surroundings like a radar, and soon enough, she locked onto a small vial that had been used but not yet cleaned. She held the small vial as if it were a precious treasure and began a series of skilled maneuvers. This supplement was incredibly powerful, capable of strengthening the bones. On the market, such a supplement a single unit would cost 4 to 5 million, yet Lu Sheng had managed to produce it with only 20,000 worth of materials. However, up to this point, Lu Sheng had refused to disclose any information about this new bone-strengthening supplements. It would have been fine if he simply didn't say anything, but the problem was that he intentionally left behind small hints every time, tantalizing clues. He deliberately tempted Ling Su to discover it on her own, leaving her feeling as if she were being teased, with an itch that was hard to scratch. And the thought of the bulging backpack he carried, surely filled with many of these new supplements, only further infuriated Ling Su. Ling Su had also considered the idea of secretly learning the technique, but the receptionist came over and reported that the surveillance had been malfunctioning the entire time and that they couldn't fix it. As soon as Lu Sheng left, it immediately started working properly again. Ling Su sighed, nodded, and waved the receptionist away. Lu Sheng being a psychic master meant that he could easily nullify all of Ling Su's attempts and render her efforts to steal the technique completely futile. Ling Su shook her head and casually threw the vial she was holding into the trash bin. In neighboring city, on a mountain road, inside a tourist bus, a young and beautiful tour guide enthusiastically introduced the itinerary and provided information about the scenic spots to the group of tourists. Only a few middle-aged women wearing red travel hats listened attentively, occasionally asking a few questions. During this time, Lu Sheng had been flipping through the resource distribution map every day, combined with the current map of Dongning province. Finally, he found a suitable location. He calculated that he had successfully refined a total of 93 marrow-nourishing pills throughout the week, which should be sufficient for his needs. Lu Sheng noticed a rolling toy ball and heard the cheerful laughter of a little girl, which brought a lively atmosphere. The little girl asked Lu Sheng if he wanted to play a game with her. The woman with long hair, who appeared to be the girl's mother, quickly apologized and pulled the little girl back to her seat. Sitting next to the woman was a man wearing glasses, whose middle-aged eyes seemed to contain a powerful aura. He exuded the presence of a level 2 psychic master. Lu Sheng smiled, realizing that this trip would likely be quite interesting. At the back of the bus, a girl with long pink hair and a tight-fitting purple crop top let out a howl, venting her frustrations. Sitting next to her, a beautiful girl with long hair and a quiet demeanor withdrew her gaze from the window scenery and said that Amelia insisted on coming. Amelia snatched Luna's fan and retorted irritably, accusing her of mistaking her concern for Luna's potential heartbreak breakup as meddling. Luna gently patted Amelia's hand, leaning closer to comfort her, saying that it was good for them to come out and relax together. Despite the shortcomings of the tour group, the scenery of Bullhead Mountain was still beautiful. Amelia glanced in a certain direction where the laughter of the little girl could be heard. The little girl was currently playing a ball-throwing game with a young guy sitting in the second-to-last row on the right side. The yellow ball flew back and forth between the seats, eliciting continuous giggles from the little girl. When Amelia saw Lu Sheng, her face turned red. His clean and handsome features resembled a male protagonist straight out of a Manhwa book. The little girl missed catching the ball, accidentally hitting the seat in front. Amelia leaned back and reached out to catch the ball, then tossed it to Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng smiled and thanked her, and Amelia blushed and giggled. Luna chuckled and teased her. 2 hours later, they finally arrived at their destination. As soon as Amelia got off the bus, she scanned the vibrant and somewhat unconventional-looking mountain village. Luna looked at the map while Amelia looked around, searching for Lu Sheng. Finally, she found him, carrying his suitcase as he descended from the bus. The little girl obviously hadn't had enough of the ball game from earlier and immediately ran to grab the Lu Sheng's arm, pouting and saying they should play together again tomorrow. Lu Sheng patting the little girl's head with a smile, nodding and agreeing to play with her tomorrow if he had the time. The little girl happily nodded. At this moment, Amelia approached and asked if she could join them in playing tomorrow. The little girl made a funny face at Amelia, calling her a bad sister and saying she didn't want to play with her.
Emotional, damn!
Amelia's attempt to touch the girl's head froze instantly, her face displaying embarrassment. The middle-aged couple smiled indulgently, watching the little girl. After exchanging greetings with a few others, the family walked away. In her heart, Amelia thought, "What a brat! I didn't even want to play with you." But she still forced a smile and waved her hand. Lu Sheng reassured Amelia, saying not to mind the words of a child. Amelia responded by saying that she wouldn't hold it against the little girl. She then took out her phone and asked Lu Sheng if they could add each other as friends. After a moment of hesitation, Lu Sheng nodded and agreed. Soon they became friends on an app, and even Luna joined in. Lu Sheng nodded at the two of them as they walked away. As the two girls grew distant, the smile on Lu Sheng's face gradually disappeared, and his gaze became sharper. In a matter of a few breaths, his demeanor transformed from harmless to cold and elusive. Little did he expect that this trip would not only lead him to encounter a rare Level 2 psychic master, but also 2 Level 2 martial artists. There were also people hiding in the back, doesn't seem wanting to reveal themselves. Lu Sheng was aware that others hadn't discovered his true identity yet. He could now freely control the diffusion and concentration of his psychic power, making it nearly impossible for most people to detect it. Lu Sheng glanced in the direction where the middle-aged couple and the little girl had left, sensing that people are following them, but they seemed weak, and the middle-aged man should be able to handle them. Lu Sheng hoped that they wouldn't interfere with his objectives. Even if they do, he doesn't mind crushing them. With that in mind, Lu Sheng dragged his suitcase and headed towards the direction of the mountain village. Meanwhile, on a certain highway, a muscular man knelt before a man with purple hair. The purple-haired man casually asked if he had found the whereabouts of Tang Maolin. The muscular man replied that he had indeed found him. Tang Maolin was in Bullhead Mountain, accompanied by his wife and daughter. It seemed like he was trying to hide in the mountains. The purple-haired man furrowed his brow, feeling somewhat displeased. The muscular man quickly assured him that they would be able to accurately locate him. This pleased the purple-haired man, who instructed the muscular man to keep a close eye on Tang Maolin until he personally arrived at Bullhead Mountain to deal with him. With an evil grin, he downed his drink, already planning how to torment Tang Maolin. Just then, he outstretched his hands, holding the cup to the side towards the woman, a gruesome and disturbing sight where purple liquid was flowing outside of the woman, floating into the cup. The purple-haired man smiled it perversely, with an evil grin, and took out a photo, which was Tang Maolin and his family. A young girl curiously dashed into a room, with a middle-aged woman following closely behind, expressing her concern. By her side, a middle-aged man entered the room, his eyes flickering with a peculiar light. An invisible force spread, instantly enveloping the entire room and building. After a moment, the glow in the man's eyes faded, and he remarked, "It's clean. No surveillance or tracking devices." His wife coaxed the little girl onto the bed, commenting on her husband's excessive caution. Shaking his head, the middle-aged man said, "Being cautious is never a bad idea, especially when his wife and his daughter is with him." The middle-aged man spoke in a deep voice, cautioning his wife that they were currently fleeing for their lives. Moreover, the person chasing them was a renowned psychic master, a formidable third-level psychic practitioner. He was known for his narrow-mindedness and relentless pursuit of vengeance for any wrongdoing, no matter how small. Hoping that they would successfully elude his pursuit this time, they believed that as long as they hid in the Bullhead village for a year or so, they should be safe. However, if by any chance he managed to track them down, the combined strength of the middle-aged man and the woman's father, both second-level psychic practitioners, might not necessarily result in their defeat. The woman let out a sigh, expressing her hope that it would turn out that way. It had been a long time since she had seen her father, and she wondered about his current well-being. The woman's father was a peak second-level psychic practitioner. The man's gaze softened, and he took a step forward, gently embracing the woman while whispering reassuringly, "Your father is highly skilled in martial arts. He might have even reached the 3rd level by now. I'm sure he's in good health." The man made a heartfelt vow that he would never let any harm come to his wife and daughter. The woman nodded and gently leaned against the middle-aged man's chest, feeling a slight sense of reassurance. Not far away, the little girl, dressed in a red dress, stood on the bed, gazing out of the window. Lu Sheng entered the accommodation arranged for him by the travel agency. He also released his psychic power, which was far stronger than that of the middle-aged man. He not only covered the entire building but also inspected all the surrounding structures, including passers-by. Aside from someone hiding in the distance and observing from the bushes, there was nothing unusual. Lu Sheng tidied up a bit and then sat on the bed, taking out a small glass vial from his pocket. Inside the glass vial were a dozen small black pills. Lu Sheng poured out one pill and swallowed it. He felt the supplement moving through his body, transforming into a surge of heat flowing through his limbs and bones. Feeling his blood energy level increase, and the progress of refining his bones with the immortal golden body technique advancing, Lu Sheng wore a satisfied smile on his face. He knew that in less than 2 months, he would be able to complete the first stage of the immortal golden body cultivation, officially becoming a 4th-level martial artist. Just then, his phone started vibrating. As usual, it was his parents calling to remind him to be careful while being away, to dress appropriately for the weather, and to avoid eating anything that could upset his stomach. In their eyes, despite being a 3rd-level martial artist, he still seemed like a child. His mischievous younger sister jokingly mentioned that Lu Sheng had gone out to play on his own, and her senior Yang had returned to school, hinting at wanting to hang out with Lu Sheng. His sister sent a playful emoji and asked if they were dating. Lu Sheng quickly replied on his phone, advising his sister to focus on her martial arts training, reminding her to take the supplements he provided her every day. He responded with a warning emoji, urging her to mind her own business. Lu Sheng set his phone aside and lay down on the bed, entering the dream realm. After days of simultaneous training, his body was enveloped in a golden light infused with the will of a Grand Master. No zombie could breach his defense. Suddenly, he noticed the appearance of another Grand Master-level zombie on the street, a female Grand Master. Clad in battle armor befitting a knight, wielding a shattered long spear, her figure was both symmetrical and perfect, resembling a mythical goddess of war. As Lu Sheng approached within 100 meters of the female Grand Master, she sensed his presence. In an instant, her figure vanished from his line of sight. When he tried to release his spiritual power to perceive her presence, he finally sensed her figure. However, by that time, the female Grand Master had already closed in to within 5 meters of him. In an instant, Lu Sheng found himself surrounded by numerous red exclamation marks, accompanied by an urgent and piercing alarm. Before Lu Sheng could react, the female Grand Master swiftly took him down with a single spear strike. Just before dying, Lu Sheng saw a magnificent and majestic glacier. As if waking up from a nightmare, Lu Sheng felt his heart racing and a splitting headache. He was startled awake, his body in intense pain, as if it had been torn apart. This was his first experience of death within the dream realm, and it felt overwhelming and powerful. Lu Sheng was deeply shaken. Until now, his exploration in the dream realm had been relatively smooth. However, he was completely defenseless against the female Grand Master. The previous smooth progress had made him somewhat complacent, but the dream realm was not his personal paradise. Lu Sheng had a profound realization. His state of mind returned to its original calmness, and the negative effects brought about by his inflated strength over the past 3 months dissipated in that moment. The immense power of the female Grand Master was undeniable, surpassing Shi Shengning in battle. She must be a Grand Master-level expert stronger than Shi Shengning, possibly even an 8th-level Grand Master. Lu Sheng recalled the radiant glacier that appeared with the thrust of her spear, perhaps a manifestation of the technique of the female Grand Master. If he could obtain it. Lu Sheng shook his head, self-deprecatingly dismissing the thought. If he hadn't underestimated the situation and fought at full strength, with his mastery of all of his techniques and newly acquired Grand Master technique, he might have had a chance to contend with the female Grand Master. However, he still wanted to go back and test himself, but no matter what he tried, he couldn't enter the dream realm again. It seemed that the dream realm had entered a cool-down period. Just then, his phone started vibrating. It was a series of messages from Amelia, one after another, flooding in like a stream. Lu Sheng stared at his phone in silence for a few seconds, suddenly regretting adding her as a friend. He quickly turned off his phone without replying. Walking out of the room and heading towards the dining hall, Lu Sheng thought he would be the only one there at this late hour. However, to his surprise, he saw the little girl's family, as well as Amelia and Luna, all seated in the dining hall. As soon as Lu Sheng appeared, he immediately caught the attention of the 2 girls. The little girl and Amelia both stood up, waving to him loudly, completely oblivious to the gazes of others. Lu Sheng waved back, then found a seat nearby and sat down. The seat wasn't far from the little girl's family. The little girl's father smiled at Lu Sheng and nodded slightly. Lu Sheng nodded in response and picked up the menu to order his meal. Amelia pulled Luna, who had a helpless look on her face, and sat down beside Lu Sheng as if they were old friends. Lu Sheng coughed a couple of times and politely asked if they had eaten yet. Both of them responded at the same time. One said they had eaten, while the other said they hadn't. Amelia gave Luna a fierce glare and said with a smile, "I wasn't hungry earlier, but now I'm hungry again." Luna teased her for a bit, but Amelia acted as if Luna didn't exist and continued talking to Lu Sheng. She began introducing the menu. Meanwhile, the little girl beside them looked eagerly at Lu Sheng's table and then lifted her head to ask her parents if she could go and have a meal with big brother Lu Sheng. The woman gently touched the little girl's head and said tenderly, "You can still have a good meal here." The little girl insisted, saying that she thinks that the food will taste better sitting next to big brother Lu Sheng. The woman glanced at her husband. The middle-aged man smiled and agreed. Seeing her husband's agreement, the woman couldn't say much and could only admonish, "Behave yourself." Only when she saw the little girl successfully join the table did the woman's eyes relax slightly. She turned her head and complained to the middle-aged man, asking, why did he allow their daughter go to a table with strangers? The middle-aged man smiled and replied, "It seems like his wife was being overly protective. That young man has a good character and his eyes are pure. He doesn't seem like a bad person. Besides, he's just a high school student. Even if Lu Sheng has trained in martial arts for a few years, his strength wouldn't be very powerful." However, the other two individuals were already second-level martial artists. The middle-aged man remained calm, exuding a strong sense of confidence in his words. As long as they were within his line of sight, a single thought from him would be enough to end their lives. Amelia's eyes widened as she looked at the table filled with food that Lu Sheng had ordered, her expression showing some surprise. Lu Sheng handed a cute dessert to the little girl, and the two of them began a competition to see who could eat faster. The little girl responded with a sweet voice and diligently shoveled the food into her mouth. Lu Sheng also ate quickly. Luna glanced at the table full of food, and her gaze towards Lu Sheng lightened a bit. Only those with average family conditions who hadn't become formal martial artists would eat so much in one meal. Once martial artists reached a certain level, those who had the means would typically rely on supplements to meet their daily energy requirements for cultivation. Those without means would choose higher quality ingredients as substitutes. Otherwise, eating so much food in every meal would result in extended trips to the bathroom. Amelia, on the other hand, didn't mind at all that Lu Sheng ate so much. She kept her promise and ate alongside him, even finding him quite handsome while eating. Luna looked at her best friend and asked, "You don't really have feelings for Lu Sheng, do you?" Saying Lu Sheng was younger than both of them, just a high school student, and judging from Lu Sheng's unstable figure and dark circles around his eyes, his martial arts talent and family background are probably not good, even though Lu Sheng has exceptional looks, physique, and demeanor. However, Amelia didn't mind and replied, "Age isn't a problem when they were just 3 or 4 years apart. Besides, it's all about fate." Luna disagreed, saying that they couldn't be together. With Lu Sheng's current situation, after graduation, he would probably only earn a monthly salary of 5,000 to 6,000, not being able to afford a house or a car. Love isn't just about temporary passion. One must face reality. Amelia's martial arts strength is getting stronger, and the gap between them will only grow over time. Eventually, conflicts will accumulate, and there will come a day when everything explodes. Amelia shook her head. She said she could help guide Lu Sheng in his martial arts journey. Even if he couldn't get into a prestigious martial arts university, she would be willing to travel to see him every week. It didn't matter if he didn't have a car or a house because she did. Even if Lu Sheng could only be an ordinary person, she would be willing to accompany him as an ordinary person. Furthermore, she didn't believe that Lu Sheng was just ordinary. She firmly believed that his future held so much more than that. She couldn't believe her best friend would give up on her decade-long martial arts practice for a high school student. Due to Lu Sheng's martial prowess, Lu Sheng could clearly hear their conversation. He rubbed his head, feeling it was somewhat troublesome, and couldn't help but sigh. The younger girl overheard and asked, "What does troublesome mean?" Lu Sheng thought for a moment and casually replied, "It means praising both of the sisters for being beautiful." The little girl nodded thoughtfully. Suddenly, she turned around and loudly pointed at Amelia and Luna, who were walking towards them. She jumped around and said the two sisters are very troublesome. Lu Sheng was taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter, nodding vigorously. Amelia and Luna looked stunned, unsure of what had just happened. The next day, everyone gathered downstairs as planned. The tourists were not very satisfied with this trip, and one elderly man noticed that a family of 3 was missing. As for when or where they disappeared, no one knew. The young tour guide hurriedly took out her phone and tried calling them, but she couldn't get through. Not only were they missing, but Lu Sheng was also nowhere to be found. The guide immediately contacted the search and rescue team. Amelia and Luna witnessed all of this. How could the 3 of them, who were perfectly fine just moments ago, suddenly vanish? The guide was occupied with the search, and it seemed like the rest of the itinerary would have to be cancelled. They decided to look for Lu Sheng themselves. According to the map, the mithril mine should be located nearby, just a few kilometers away. Lu Sheng swiftly dashed through the forest, leaping to the mountaintop where he released his powerful psychic power. His eyes shimmered with a brilliant light as he calmly surveyed the area before him. He detected the buried minerals beneath the ground, and in the next moment, wherever his gaze fell, the earth and stones shattered, and the ground exploded. It was as if an invisible tornado had swept through, causing terrifying destruction. Lifting a large chunk of soil with his psychic power, Lu Sheng observed as it disintegrated in midair, revealing a glimmer of mineral. After a few seconds, various pieces of silver-like minerals were presented before him. Infusing his psychic energy into them, the tough as steel metal quickly softened, becoming as malleable as dough. Lu Sheng compared the description from the information provided by Snowy and verified that the silver pieces in his hand were indeed the precious mithril. Lu Sheng knew that crafting weapons with mithril required dozens of steps, and there might not be much left in the end, depending on the purity of the mithril in this mine. He had already used his psychic power to investigate and realized that the mine was too small to yield a substantial amount, making it easy for him to excavate and carry out the ore. However, he soon faced a dilemma: how to transport the mithril out. His initial plan was to use his backpack and carry the mithril in batches, mining a little and transporting it bit by bit until he had enough to craft a set of weapons for psychic masters. Yet, Lu Sheng had overlooked a crucial aspect: greed. Everyone had desires, and he was no exception. Lu Sheng made up his mind and decided to put the mithril back into the large pit he had dug earlier. He covered it up with soil and stones, hiding the existence of the precious metal. The map indicated that there was a small village of a minority community a few kilometers away from his location. Lu Sheng decided to head there to seek help. The villagers of this secluded village were generally known for their sincerity and simplicity. By offering a generous reward, Lu Sheng believed he would be able to find assistance easily. Following the map's directions, he made his way towards the village. Meanwhile, the 2 girls continued their search for Lu Sheng in the forest. They gradually ventured deeper into the wilderness, but Luna suddenly halted their steps. Her eyes were fixated on something within the forest next to the stone path, and there was an inexplicable glimmer in her gaze. Swiftly, Luna darted into the woods beside the road and stopped about few meters away from the main path. She crouched down and looked closer, which caught Amelia's attention. It was a toy ball, similar to the one a little girl had been playing with earlier. As Amelia moved to pick up the ball, her body seemed to freeze in place. A purple spiderweb suddenly appeared, ensnaring both girls. Just then, a man's voice echoed from ahead of them. A family came out from the forest, walking into a secluded little village. One of the villagers darted into the village. The young man then rushed into the village chief's house, where a chief was busy carving a piece of wood. "Big sister is back," announced the young man. Upon seeing their arrival, the chief let out a kind smile. A little girl then shouted, "Grandpa!" and ran in, throwing herself into the chief's arms, almost knocking the wind out of him. The couple appeared somewhat uneasy, bowing their heads and muttering their greetings to the chief. Soon, a few young men heard the commotion and came to greet the couple. The chief instructed 2 young men to go out and hunt for some food, hoping to enliven the evening. A robust young man hoisted the little girl onto his shoulders, intending to take her along for the hunt. Innocently, the little girl expressed her desire for the chicken soup she had last time. The young man affectionately rubbed the girl's face and agreed. Watching the 2 leave, the chief closed his eyes, lighting up a tobacco pipe. The couple slowly approached him, their expressions somewhat complex. The middle-aged man succinctly recounted their predicament. Upon hearing they had provoked a 3rd-level psychic master, the chief let out a series of coughs, his cold laughter not ceasing. Pointing at the middle-aged man, he said he knew that no good would come when he had taken Manhwa, his daughter, away from the village years ago. He knew such a day would come. Manhwa softly called out, pleading for her father to save her husband. The middle-aged man turned to the chief, remembering that his father-in-law had been attempting to break into the 3rd level for a long time. The chief cut him off, admitting his attempt had failed and had left him with internal injuries, causing a great decline in his cultivation and strength. If he encountered a 3rd-level psychic master, he could only buy them some time, urging them to flee with the child and seek help elsewhere. The man looked confused, not knowing who they should turn to for help. The chief glared at him, instructing him to seek help from the local departments or the Martial Artist Association. He reminded them that they were living in a society governed by law. Even a 3rd-level psychic master couldn't just kill people on the street. The middle-aged man, Tang's expression, however, was far from optimistic. If reporting to the authorities could solve the problem, he would have done so long ago, instead of dragging his family all the way to this remote mountainous area. The chief seemed somewhat tired, dismissively waving his hand, signaling them to leave. Just as Tang and his wife were preparing to leave the room, suddenly, someone rushed in, reporting that an outsider had arrived. Their hearts sank in an instant. Lu Sheng, with his map, looked just like an ordinary mountain tourist, curiously observing the village in front of him while following a few villagers. The entire village was not large and could be fully seen from a high vantage point. The environment, however, was extraordinary, like an idyllic paradise. Suddenly, a dart flew towards him. Lu Sheng sidestepped it with ease. The young man asked who Lu Sheng was and how he got in. A little girl's head suddenly popped out from the bushes. She cheerfully greeted Lu Sheng and ran into his arms. Lu Sheng was taken aback. He hadn't expected to encounter the little girl and her family here. Seeing the map in Lu Sheng's hand, Tang, whose face was filled with surprise and bewilderment, felt a heavy weight lift from his heart. Tang took the initiative to approach and asked Lu Sheng how he ended up there. Lu Sheng scratched his head in embarrassment, explaining he didn't like traveling with the tourist group and had accidentally lost his way while exploring the mountain alone. Tang laughed heartily, explaining that this was his father-in-law's village, and they returned here every year to visit. Tang subconsciously looked toward his father-in-law. The chief squinted, sizing up Lu Sheng. He nodded and commented that Lu Sheng's eyes were very pure, then welcomed him with a smile to Celestial Village. The young man who previously attacked Lu Sheng flashed a smile, extending his hands towards Lu Sheng, apologizing for the earlier incident. Lu Sheng waved it off, indicating he didn't mind, but in his mind, he was considering the uniqueness of this village. Psychic practitioners were rare, yet there were 3 in this village, and the old chief was a surprising peak 2nd-level psychic master. Lu Sheng had originally intended to ask if he could hire help to transport the mithril, but given the circumstances, he didn't know how to broach the subject. As psychic practitioners, they would undoubtedly understand the value of mithril. While Lu Sheng was contemplating how to proceed, the little girl plaintively told him that she had lost her ball. It took him a moment to realize that she was referring to the plastic ball they had been playing with earlier. Lu Sheng patted the girl's head gently, promising he would help her find it. He released his psychic energy, spreading it around. When he discerned the scenes in that direction, the smile on his face gradually faded until it disappeared entirely. Suddenly, he sensed Amelia and Luna's presence. The once lively and cheerful celestial village suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked in one direction. Tang's face grew grave and tense, and the old chief put down his burning pipe, his eyes slowly narrowing. At the entrance of the village, a group of people was steadily approaching. Leading the group was a man in a purple suit, and his name is Sassy Wu, his eyes emitting an eerie purple glow. A man behind him had Amelia and Luna slung over his shoulder. Both of the girls had tapes around their mouths, preventing them from speaking, but the look in Amelia's eyes seemed to tell Lu Sheng to run. After spotting the man was a peak third-level psychic master. The old chief unleashed his full power, and his psychic energy radiated around him. He shouted for Tang to flee with his family and the villagers. Several streaks of golden light surged from the chief towards Sassy Wu, who remained calm, waving his hand dismissively. Silver lines and golden light intertwined mid-air, clashing and creating a sound reminiscent of swords clashing. The golden light gradually dissipated, and Sassy Wu looked at Tang with a smirk, taking a step forward. He told the chief that his energy was weak and power was too shallow, unworthy of being called a psychic master, and then he released his psychic energy, step by step, walking towards them. Tang's face turned pale, shouting sharply, readying to fight back. From his sleeves, countless small black iron beads shot out, densely packed, flying towards Sassy Wu. Sassy Wu didn't even flinch, extending a hand toward Tang. The silver line suddenly retracted, clashing directly with the iron beads. All of the iron beads were destroyed and cut in half, and Tang's face turned even more pale, with sweat rolling down his forehead as he took steps back. In an instant, Sassy Wu shot the silver thread toward everyone, controlling it to wrap around everyone and the necks of the old chief and Tang. Sassy Wu looked around. This deserted place was perfect for torturing them at his leisure, and no one will ever find out. He licked his lips as he looked at the little girl, planning to use her to make liquor. Tang was desperate, his eyes bloodshot as he shouted at Sassy Wu, calling him an animal. Sassy Wu, however, burst out laughing, tightening the silver thread around the necks. He seemed to revel in the helplessness of the middle-aged man. Luna's eyes welled up with tears. She knew that Sassy Wu was definitely a third-level peak psychic master, and she knew everyone was going to die here. Amelia looked at Lu Sheng, already accepting her fate. Even though she wasn't willing to die here, she hoped that they could meet again in the next life. Sassy Wu ordered his subordinates to bring the little girl over, and Sassy Wu's grin grew even brighter. Suddenly, a sound as sharp as a cannon tearing through the air interrupted his words. His silver thread had been broken, and Lu Sheng's eyes gradually grew cold. He held the silver thread in his hand and smiled at the little girl, assuring her that everything was all right now. The two subordinates rushed towards Lu Sheng, and Lu Sheng simply threw a non-serious punch. To Sassy Wu's surprise, the two burly figures who were supposed to be fourth-level martial artists, like broken sacks, were knocked back in his direction and rapidly flew toward him. Sassy Wu looked at Lu Sheng, who appeared so weak. How could he possibly have the power of a fifth-level martial artist? He shook his head, dismissing Lu Sheng as just a kid with inhuman strength. He summoned the silver thread once more, threatening to slice Lu Sheng's body open like butter. Lu Sheng held the little girl with one hand and looked at Sassy Wu with a smirk. His eyes were serene, and he calmly observed Sassy Wu. The powerful psychic energy of a third-level psychic exploded out, and dozens of silver threads interwove in front of Sassy Wu, forming a delicate and intricate spider-shaped web that shot toward Lu Sheng. But the next second, Sassy Wu's smile froze on his face. Hundreds of silver threads that were so fast they were almost imperceptible to the naked eye were stopped by Lu Sheng with his bare hands. Lu Sheng calmly extended his right hand. His palm seemed to harbor a black hole vortex. The silver spider threads that shot to Lu Sheng were all absorbed by the vortex in his palm, all converging into his hand. From a distance, Luna, who had witnessed all this, her eye bludge, can't believe what was happening. It was as if she had been electrified, her lips trembling madly. This was control-level martial arts. Luna had only heard a teacher mention it once in the martial arts class at Dongning University. It was like something that should exist in legends suddenly appeared before her. Far away, Sassy Wu let out a shocking scream that was almost distorted. His eyes were wide open, filled with disbelief. The strength of a psychic master is a presence that transcends ordinary martial artists. What Lu Sheng was doing now was something he couldn't even imagine. It was as if someone had caught a missile with their bare hands. Hundreds of silver spider threads were held in Lu Sheng's hand. He yanked hard at the threads in his hand. Sassy Wu in his purple suit in the distance immediately let out a cry of surprise, like a puppet being pulled by a string, involuntarily flying towards Lu Sheng. Suddenly he stopped, his eyes staring fixedly at Lu Sheng, showing a deep sense of madness. As he spoke, a terrifying psychic power far beyond before expanded from Sassy Wu's body. The chief shouted, "Be careful! He's going to self-destruct his psychic power!" Everyone was worried, and their face gradually turned pale. Amelia looked worriedly at Lu Sheng. Only Lu Sheng, who was at the center of attention, remained motionless. He watched as Sassy Wu, with his distorted features, grew closer and closer. A deep pity showed on his face. "I have to say, your psychic power is—" Lu Sheng then paused. He shook his head and spoke softly. "It's pitifully weak." The next second, the twisted smile of Sassy Wu froze. In front of him, in front of everyone, they saw Lu Sheng holding Sassy Wu in one hand, as if he had pinched an ant to death and squeezed him to death. Lu Sheng then let go, leaving the messed-up figure crashing onto the ground. Hundreds of silver threads dispersed. The secret mithril-crafted psychic weapon he then put away. The little girl looked at Lu Sheng in surprise, thanking him for saving everyone. At this moment, everyone in the village was already shocked to the point where they couldn't speak. The martial arts strength demonstrated by Lu Sheng was already terrifying, but the psychic power was even more scalp-numbing. The chief slumped to the ground, a high school student with the power of a fifth-level martial artist, and psychic strength overwhelming a peak third-level psychic master. As if a nuclear bomb had exploded, directly clearing everyone's minds and leaving them momentarily blank. The most shocked people were Luna and Amelia. Both of them were high-achieving students at Dongning Martial Art University. It can be said that the number of prodigy they have seen around them is countless, many of which are unimaginable for ordinary people. But now, the so-called prodigy they could think of in their minds, compared to Lu Sheng. Their difference are simply day and night. They weren't even qualified to tie Lu Sheng's shoes. As if Tang was waking up from a dream, he ran over quickly. He first checked the safety of his wife and daughter, then got up and walked to Lu Sheng. Tang opened his mouth but found that he didn't know how to address Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng was still Lu Sheng, but his status in his mind has already changed dramatically from before. Lu Sheng smiled and said that their relationship has not changed. How they used to call him, they can still call him now. It wasn't a big deal. To him, what he did was just casually crushed a pervert. There is no need to thank him, but there is one more thing he needs their help with. Tang quickly nodded and said he would do his best. 3 hours later, Lu Sheng got on the bus. Lu Sheng's eyes were fixed on the scenery outside the window. He was quietly thinking about things. He had achieved his main goals this time. He left the minerals and mithril to Tang. Lu Sheng knew Tang probably have his own special channels to deal with this batch of mithril. As for Lu Sheng, it was time to register for his psychic master's qualification. Not only that, but Lu Sheng also got an extra set of secret mithril psychic weapons. All those hundreds of silver threads were made of mithril. Lu Sheng weighed it, and it was about 4 or 5 pounds. On the seat to his left, Amelia and Luna were both watching him, especially Amelia, who was no longer hiding her feelings for Lu Sheng. She stared at Lu Sheng's side face, not knowing what she was thinking. She suddenly asked Lu Sheng where he planned to go. Lu Sheng turned his head and said he was going to the Psychokineticist Association. Amelia blurted out, her face full of joy. "The Psychokineticist Association is in the city where she lives. They can go together." Lu Sheng looked at her in confusion and asked, "Isn't she a student of Dongning Martial Arts University?" It was quite far. Amelia was at a loss for words. Luna the side looked at her helpless face and came to the rescue, saying that it was Amelia's hometown, and she was originally going to go home anyway. Amelia hurriedly agreed. Lu Sheng smiled slightly and nodded, saying they will go together then. He still had some questions to ask Amelia. Amelia was overjoyed, her pretty face glowing, as if she had just gotten a great deal, and even offered that Lu Sheng could stay at her house if needed. Lu Sheng liked to have Amelia as a friend. Just moments ago, when Sassy Wu attacked, Amelia was captured, and she risked her life to warn him to run. Such consideration was indeed rare. Suddenly a phone call came in. It was from Snowy. Snowy said that the military star selection had been brought forward, and she was coming to pick up Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng was a bit surprised, but informed Snowy of his whereabouts. After the three of them got off the bus, Lu Sheng suddenly said that he had something to attend and needed to part ways. Amelia was a bit disappointed, but she quickly recovered and offered to find someone to be his driver. Lu Sheng shook his head and said his friend was on the way. Then, the roaring sound of an engine approaching from afar echoed throughout the street, attracting many people to stretch their necks and watch. A supercar rushed from the distance and approached quickly. The car door swung upward, and two people stood up from inside. The girl rushed out of the car and gave Amelia a fierce hug. The blond young man sitting in the car, dressed in colorful clothing, greeted them with a smile. Amelia let go of the girl whom she was hugging and glanced at the blond young man with a somewhat unhappy face. She didn't expect him to be here too. Amelia politely introduced Luna, saying that she was her best friend who also studied at Dongning University and was a second-level martial artist. When it came to introducing Lu Sheng, she blushed and mentioned his name, and said that they were good friends they met while traveling. Amelia thought that the mysterious and dazzling aspects of Lu Sheng could not be explained in a sentence or two, and he probably don't want his martial status released to strangers. Unfortunately, both the girl and the blond young man did not notice this. Their attention was entirely on Luna. The girl proactively extended her right hand to Luna and enthusiastically introduced herself. The blond young man's eyes lit up noticeably when he heard that Luna was a second-level martial artist from Dongning University. He introduced himself and said casually that they were all friends now. As for Lu Sheng, the two glanced at him and did not pay him any further attention. The man took out his keys to unlock the car door and pointed at the cool sports car with a smile, saying that there were just enough 4 seats and they could go out to have fun together. However, Amelia frowned as she stared at the back seat of the sports car. There were only 2 spots. Where would Lu Sheng sit? The girl, surprised, opened her eyes wide and without any hesitation said directly, calling out Lu Sheng was just a travel friend who Amelia met on the way. There was no need to bring him along. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng didn't show any sign of anger. He politely declined and told Amelia that his friend would pick him up soon. The blond young man pulled out a wad of cash from his pocket, threw it in front of Lu Sheng, and told him to take a taxi by himself. Amelia was very angry, but Lu Sheng just stared at the banknotes scattered on the ground by the blond young man. Lu Sheng patted Amelia on the shoulder and told her it was okay. Just then, a rumbling sound of helicopter blades came from above their heads. The sound was so loud that it was even accompanied by a gust of wind, blowing the banknotes all over the place. The people looked up in surprise, only to see a large helicopter hovering above the bus stop, just over their heads. A beautiful female officer in a dark blue military uniform stood next to the open door of the helicopter, half of her body hanging out, throwing down a long rope ladder. She told Lu Sheng to hurry up and climb. Lu Sheng looked at the bewildered faces of Amelia and Luna. He gave a slight smile and then said farewell, and then, with a leap, he jumped and held onto the ladder, then quickly climbed up the rope ladder to the helicopter. The girl who had previously looked down upon Lu Sheng was shocked to see the words Eastern Military District on the helicopter. She and the blond young man, who had looked down on Lu Sheng before, were completely dumbfounded at this moment. Their mouths gaped open, large enough to fit a fist. The sudden change in Lu Sheng's status and the unexpected appearance of the military helicopter completely overturned their previous impressions of him. This sudden turn of events humbled the two. It was a reminder that the world was much larger and more complex than they had previously understood, and people weren't always as simple as they might first appear. The military helicopter's doors closed. The rotor blades whipped up a final gust of wind, stirring up small tornadoes on the street below, and then quickly took off. The crowd waiting at the bus stop below was filled with exclamations, and many people took out their phones to take photos. The young guy asked Amelia about Lu Sheng's identity. Amelia coldly glanced at both of them, then grabbed Luna's arm and prepared to leave by taxi. Lu Sheng sat inside the helicopter, looking out through the window glass. The view of the city quickly shrank, also as if becoming like a small town built with Legos. This wasn't Lu Sheng's first time on a plane, but it was his first time in a helicopter. Snowy saw his reaction and smiled, asking him if he liked the helicopter. Lu Sheng responded with a smile, asking if she could give it to him as a gift. Snowy rolled her eyes at him, telling him that once he was promoted to the Grandmaster level and joined the Eastern Military District, the military district would provide him with a private one to ride. Lu Sheng just smiled and didn't say anything. His gaze returned from the window and closed his eyes to rest. In Snowy's eyes, Lu Sheng seemed a little different. She couldn't see through him anymore. The joke was over, and she took out a file. All the prodigy training camps in all the provinces of the Eastern Military District had concluded, and the candidates for the military star selection from each province had all been determined. This year's military star selection candidates were stronger than any previous years. Snowy's expression turned serious. When she received the materials, even she was greatly shocked. Qin joked that if it hadn't been for their province producing such a monster like Lu Sheng, they would end up like a cheerleader on the sidelines. The data in the materials, even though they had looked over it several times and could almost recite it by heart, still stuns them. 80% of the candidates were martial artists with special talents. Among them were elemental control-type martial artists, also a psychic practitioner who passed the second-level examination. The most scary thing was there was even a freak with the strength of fourth-level martial artists. After saying all this, Qin and Snowy looked up and found that Lu Sheng had been looking out the window the entire time, seemingly looking at the scenery. Snowy laughed bitterly, wondering why Lu Sheng didn't show any sort of surprise. Hearing about the strength of these people, Lu Sheng turned his head and showed a JoJo face, nodding while exclaiming, "Wow, I'm super surprised! They are so strong!" Qin laughed, noting that Lu Sheng was too fake. Qin knew that talking to Lu Sheng about these things was pointless. It was better to talk about the rewards. Hearing this, Lu Sheng became extremely excited. Snowy explained with a laugh that many big shots from the army department would come to watch the selection this time, and the arena fights would be changed to battles against alien beasts. Lu Sheng thought to himself, in this world, almost everyone knew. The greatest opponents humans faced were those strange and powerful beasts that emerged from the cracks in the ground and the gaps in the sky, possessing bizarre abilities, terrifying strength, and seemingly endless numbers. Countless human martial artists devoted themselves to the battlefield, but even so, the living space of humans was still shrinking year by year. Lu Sheng was quite surprised. The military was letting students to combat with these beasts so early. He guessed that the frontline situation was not optimistic. Snowy nodded, saying that a gentle, step-by-step approach was no longer suitable for them. Only by experiencing pressure early could they transform it into motivation for martial arts. Lu Sheng nodded in agreement with this concept. Snowy said that although the selection had become more difficult this time, the rewards had become more abundant. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng became interested. As long as one could get into the top 10, they could obtain a vial of exotic beast blood. The top 3 could directly enter the blood pool, and the one who obtains the coveted title of Military Star would get the opportunity to enter an even higher level, the marrow pool. Lu Sheng had never heard of these things, but they sounded pretty powerful. Snowy told Lu Sheng that many beasts contained energy substances that greatly benefited martial artists in their cultivation, such as the beast meat they ate in the training camp. However, the beast's meat only underwent the most basic and initial processing, while the beast's blood and marrow were the most essential and most valuable parts. The top 10 could only obtain a few hundred milliliters of the blood, while the top 3 could enter the pool, which was a whole cultivation tank, absorbing as much as one could. As for the first place reward, the marrow pool, it was beyond measurement in value. Lu Sheng knew that the martial art techniques he was practicing now required a large amount of energy, and using supplements was a slow process. If he could obtain the beast's blood and beast marrow, the rewards could benefit him greatly. This time Lu Sheng nodded seriously. Seeing Lu Sheng's attitude becoming a little more serious, Snowy also showed satisfaction's smile on her face. After an unknown amount of time, they arrived at the Eastern Military District. Looking down, they could see a forest of buildings, countless armored vehicles coming and going, and various high-tech weapons and military personnel. Qin proudly asked Lu Sheng if he was impressed by the Eastern Military District. Lu Sheng nodded, but he was not too shocked, having seen many martial arts bases in the future, which was all dozens of times larger, but still ended up shredded into ruins. That was the real shock. The cabin door opened, and Lu Sheng followed Snowy in a military armored vehicle, entering a massive building. Tomorrow would be the official start of the military star selection process. Snowy led Lu Sheng to a room. Snowy suggested that Lu Sheng rest for the night, and after giving a few instructions, she left. Lu Sheng took a moment to assess the room inside. It wasn't large and didn't even have windows. The only piece of furniture was a bed. Habitually, Lu Sheng swept the room with his psychic power before lying down on the bed. He fell asleep, immediately entering his dream realm. Once again, Lu Sheng found himself in that familiar dream realm, the same military base he remembered. Carefully, he turned a corner, and immediately a familiar figure appeared before him. Lu Sheng hesitated, wondering if he should attempt it once more. With a serene look in his eyes, he took a deep breath. Tenfold stellar force, control-level fist technique, activating his level 3 psychic power. Lastly, he used the Grandmaster technique, 10 suns in the sky. Now radiating like a golden sun, Lu Sheng surrounded by flames, and he rapidly dashed toward the female Grandmaster. The moment Lu Sheng's aura erupted, the female Grandmaster sensed his presence. Her gaze turned towards Lu Sheng, yet her emotion was unchanged. With a gentle sweep of her broken long spear, she vanished from sight. The brilliant golden sun and the dazzling icy river violently clashed. After about 10 minutes, Lu Sheng jolted awake on the bed, as if roused from a nightmare. Sweat drenched his forehead, and his face was pale. However, traces of excitement shimmered across Lu Sheng's face. When he was going full out, he could actually go heads-on with the female Grandmaster, unlike last time when he was instantly defeated. More importantly, this battle had further honed his martial skills. He also overcame his fear of dying in the dream realm. By the next morning, Snowy and Qin came to visit Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng mentioned that the room felt a bit stuffy. Snowy explained that the base set up by the Eastern Military District was located just a few hundred kilometers from the front lines of the battlefield against the beasts. Many of these beasts emitted toxic gases, so the base's gas protection measures were very stringent. Snowy was in the middle of her sentence when she suddenly stopped, fixing her gaze on Lu Sheng. Snowy felt that there was something different about Lu Sheng compared to yesterday. Qin felt the same way. If he were to describe it, Lu Sheng yesterday was like a jade stone covered in mud. Today, it seemed as if that layer of mud had been completely washed away. Clearly, Lu Sheng had made another breakthrough in his martial arts. Lu Sheng responded seriously. Maybe he just became more handsome. Growth spurts happen quickly at this age. Qin looked at Lu Sheng with an appreciative gaze. The three continued walking down a corridor. When Qin asked Lu Sheng about his chances of winning, Lu Sheng merely chuckled and modestly said he would do his best. At that moment, a voice echoed around them. Two figures were approaching. Leading them was a male military officer. Behind him trailed a young man with a smirking expression. The young man was about the same age as Lu Sheng. The officer greeted them with a smile. Snowy coldly glanced at him, simply uttering the officer's name and stating that he was as annoying as ever. Lu Sheng couldn't help but glance at Snowy. It seemed like the two didn't get along. This was the first time he'd seen Snowy express such undisguised disdain towards someone. The officer, whose name is Richard, seemingly unfazed by Snowy's comment and continues laughing. His gaze briefly lingered on Qin and Lu Sheng. He taunted, "Qin's a waste. Seems like he brought along another waste." Lu Sheng was speechless. This guy, Richard, really was asking for trouble. Qin wasn't angered. He simply pinched his nose and told Richard that if he hadn't brushed his teeth this morning, it'd be better if he kept his mouth shut. Qin, with a mocking expression, flipped through some files, remarking that the prodigy representatives of Richard's province didn't seem impressive. There were no special annotations. These annotations refer to individuals with outstanding abilities, those worth special attention. Richard proposed a bet to see whose prodigy representative would rank higher in the selection. The wager? A 5th-level beast marrow. Snowy scoffed, telling Richard that there are 3 of them. She then ignored him, continuing towards the elevator. Richard abruptly stopped them. Snowy flashed a triumphant grin, and Richard quickly added, increasing the wager to 3. His consistent disdain and mockery angered Snowy, who clenched her teeth and accepted the bet. Richard patted the young man beside him, telling him that the 3 5th-level beast marrow would elevate his martial arts even further. The young man's face lit up with a mocking smile, rings of flames encircling him. He sarcastically thanked Snowy. Qin and Snowy hadn't expected this young man to have elemental control abilities, and they certainly didn't expect them to cheat by not documenting it. With a surprised Pikachu face, they angrily condemned Richard's shamelessness. Richard, on the other hand, brimming with smugness, laughed heartily and walked away alongside the young man. Once the duo was out of sight, the previously frustrated Snowy and the infuriated Qin simultaneously regained their composure. Gazing at the departing figures, they both uttered the same word in unison. Idiots. Grinning, Qin asked Lu Sheng about his acting just now. Lu Sheng laughed, commenting that Qin's expressions were too exaggerated and his movements too rigid. Snowy chuckled. Only a fool like that officer would think he could hide an elemental control talent. But does he know how that compares to a level 3 psychic master? Lu Sheng looked at the two of them as if he was seeing them for the first time, and couldn't help but feel deep sympathy for Richard, who was still basking in his perceived triumph. Snowy explained that their families were at odds, and Richard was notorious for his foul mouth. She then turned to Lu Sheng, placing her hopes on him for this military star selection. Soon, they arrived at an elevator. Snowy and Qin could only accompany him this far. Someone below would explain the selection rules to him. As the elevator doors were about to close, Snowy suddenly stepped forward, looking intently into Lu Sheng's eyes, and asked seriously, "How confident is Lu Sheng about this selection?" Lu Sheng shook his head, saying only a bit, but not a lot. Seeing his response, both Snowy and Qin showed a hint of disappointment in their eyes, but still they asked, "How much is not a lot?" In the next moment, as the elevator doors were slowly closing, they saw Lu Sheng, with a calm expression, reply, 99.9%. The only way he'd lose is if he suddenly got disqualified from the selection now. In the conference room, officers were busy with preparations when a middle-aged man with a general's star on his shoulder walked in. Everyone halted their activities, standing erect to salute him. This was a level 7 Grandmaster, Major General Yu. When he inquired if all representatives had arrived, Snowy, holding a tablet, reported, "All candidates have entered their respective tracks. The candidate who defeats all the arranged beasts and reaches the finish line first will be the winner. Each track has 3 level 2 beasts, 1 level 3 beast, and 1 level 4 beast. In the final challenge, they will face a peak level 4 beast." Upon hearing this, the other officers in the conference room couldn't believe their ears. A peak level 4 beast, the strongest in its class, the golden-eyed demon ape. Even they would need at least 2 of their rank to face it. It seemed an excessive challenge for a group of 18-year-old students. Snowy explained, "This is the final team test. The star selection is aimed at choosing leaders within the army. To overcome a formidable enemy, they must learn to harness all of their strength. That's the key to victory." Major General Yu then spoke up. Their military district guards the country's second most dangerous front line, yet for consecutive years, they have ranked at the bottom in the national military district competition. If the best talents of the eastern region can't even face a peak level 4 beast, then their military district, their nation, has no future. Upon hearing this, the officers fell silent, and the selection officially began. The first was a student from Haiking Province. He sprinted through the long corridor when suddenly a massive pig-like beast violently rammed him into the wall. He tried to protect himself with his hands, but then, from behind, a three-eyed cat beast emerged. He was eliminated. Many watched the screen with growing disappointment, seeing that many had already been eliminated. The general sighed and instructed the guards and instructors to pay attention to the safety of these students and to ensure they weren't injured. At that moment, he wanted to check on the students who were highlighted as key contenders. The first was 17-year-old Amy, an elemental talent martial artist who could control electricity. She was currently at a first-level control rank. The second was an 18-year-old boy named David, a psychic talent martial artist. He had passed the second-level psychic master assessment. The third screen showed a very striking young man. Standing over 2 meters tall with a body full of muscles was 18-year-old Rocky. He was a 4th-level martial artist with a defensive talent. He could make his skin as hard as iron. Even 3rd-level beasts couldn't breach his defense. The general had high hopes for Rocky. Many of the officers had already secretly considered him to be the most likely candidate for the title of this year's rising military star. Suddenly, a young man appeared on the screen. It was no other than Lee, the prodigy representing Richard's province, possessing the elemental control talent of fire, which wasn't mentioned in the data. Richard stood up, explaining that Lee's abilities had awakened not long ago, and there wasn't time to update the data. The general nodded slightly. However, other officers sneered at such an excuse. Not having time to update? Isn't it just intentional concealment, hoping to make a grand appearance during the selection? They all knew such tricks but couldn't be bothered to call them out. Richard, however, seemed quite pleased, enjoying the attention. As he sat down, he specifically glanced in the direction of Snowy, mouthing the words, 3 portions of beast's marrow. At this moment, the screen fluctuated for the second time. A candidate was dashing through the course rapidly, even faster than all of the prodigies mentioned earlier. Upon seeing this, General Yu turned his head in disbelief at this student's rapid advancement. To his astonishment, General Yu discovered that there wasn't a single red dot indicating an active beast on this particular track. He immediately asked Snowy to pull up the live surveillance. All of the officers in the room shifted their focus onto the monitor. Only 3 minutes into the start of the race, Lu Sheng had already defeated all the beasts on his track. General Yu demanded to know who this contestant was, and only then did Snowy realize that it was Lu Sheng's track. Switching the surveillance to 3 minutes earlier, they watched as Lu Sheng entered his designated track and immediately encountered the first beast. Recollecting that he had once consumed the meat of this exact beast, Lu Sheng dispatched it with a casual punch. 2 stone gates in front of him opened, revealing 2 more beasts. Lu Sheng hurled the horn of the defeated beast at one, and with a gentle kick, took down the other. He did not hasten his pace, but instead seemed to be gauging his martial prowess and assessing his own condition. He moved with his eyes closed, tuning into his surroundings. Suddenly, a 3rd-level beast appeared from behind him. Without even looking, Lu Sheng nonchalantly flicked a small pebble with his foot. The pebble shot out like a bullet, striking the beast's belly and propelling it away. In the conference room, all eyes were on Lu Sheng as he maneuvered through the course, having almost reached the final track. Many officers were puzzled. To them, Lu Sheng appeared ordinary, yet he could effortlessly defeat the beasts with simple as one punch. General Yu asked Snowy to introduce this student. Snowy recited, he was a prodigy representative from Dongning Province, Lu Sheng, a level 3 martial artist with a strength-type talent. Upon hearing this, Richard realized Snowy and Chin had also concealed some info. The officers began discussing. The records showed nothing extraordinary about him. They hadn't noticed any special abilities either. General Yu then enlightened them. Lu Sheng has mastered more than 4 types of martial arts in the perfect state. Both his movement techniques and fist techniques have reached a meticulous state, which makes his combat prowess exceptionally outstanding in real battle scenarios. The expressions of the officers subtly shifted, showing hints of astonishment. Mastering 4 or 5 martial arts, all reaching the perfect states, and even including 2 that are in the meticulous states. How could an 18-year-old possibly achieve this? General Yu was delighted. It's been a long time since he has seen such a pure martial arts prodigy. People like Lu Sheng were more common during the first 100 years when martial arts just began to flourish. But now, he shook his head. Before General Yu could continue, the screen showed Lu Sheng reaching the 6th stage. The beast at this stage had the ability to become invisible and create duplicates. 3 of them surrounded Lu Sheng. As they all leaped at him simultaneously, Lu Sheng, using the recently comprehended the perfect martial path, sensed the real beast hidden in the shadows. With a light grasp, he pinned the creature down. The cat-like beast let out a surprised meow before Lu Sheng lifted and then violently slammed it to the ground. General Yu, taken aback, stood up from his chair in surprise. The level 4 beast was defeated in an instant. General Yu burst into laughter, admitting he was wrong. Lu Sheng's fist technique has reached the state of mastery. Richard glared at Qin with gritted teeth. In response, Qin gestured at them with an internationally recognized gesture, staying silent. Lu Sheng slowly approached the final gate, standing in front of a massive door. He could sense an immensely powerful beast behind it. As the doors opened, a gigantic cage was revealed, imprisoning a colossal ape standing over 10 meters tall. Its massive silhouette blocked the overhead lights, casting shadows. All that was visible were a pair of dark gold eyes radiating a brutal aura and the terrifying sound of its breathing, reminiscent of the rumbling of volcanic magma. Having finished his warm-up, Lu Sheng was now ready to go all out. Sensing Lu Sheng's intent to battle, the golden-eyed demon ape raised its arm and let out an enraged roar, causing the surrounding corridors to resonate with a humming sound. Inside the conference room, all the officers held their breath. They were not expecting Lu Sheng to challenge the golden-eyed demon ape just by himself. But they knew that the absolute climax of this military star selection was about to unfold. Lu Sheng slowly approached the golden-eyed demon ape. Everyone assumed that Lu Sheng was waiting for all the prodigies to arrive. In the monitoring room, Lu Sheng had already given Snowy too many surprises. Lu Sheng was just a step away from winning the military star selection. As the officers debated how many prodigies would be required to defeat the demon ape, to everyone's astonishment, Lu Sheng kicked aside the cage in front of him, urging the golden-eyed demon ape to come at him. These higher-level beasts possessed a certain level of intelligence, and it could sense the disdain and contempt in Lu Sheng's words. The demon ape fixed its gaze on Lu Sheng, slowly rising to its full height. Lu Sheng beckoned it with a gesture, curious to witness the power of a peak level 4 beast. The golden-eyed demon ape roared with such fury that the surrounding walls vibrated, causing the overhead fluorescent lights to flicker erratically. Even the screens in the monitoring room rippled by the force of the roar. Everyone in the room was shocked. They could never imagine that Lu Sheng was daring enough to challenge the demon ape on his own. One of the officers pondered for a moment, then commented that with the skills Lu Sheng had shown, if he relied on agility and didn't confront the demon ape head-on, he might have a chance. At this very moment, the demon ape raised its chained fists and ferociously smashed them down towards Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng didn't dodge. He braced himself, standing firm and raising both hands to meet the demon ape's descending fists head-on. The very officer who had begun saying that Lu Sheng wouldn't dare to face the blow directly stopped mid-sentence, eyes glued to the screen, words stuck in his throat. Lu Sheng's legs sunk into the stone floor, but he managed to block the demon ape's punch. Without wasting a moment, the demon ape attacked again, its fists as large as tree trunks whistling through the air like gusts of wind. Richard watched Lu Sheng with a mocking look, calling out Lu Sheng as being arrogant. Snowy, however, began to worry. Arms as thick as century-old tree trunks clashed against the slender Lu Sheng. The vast difference in their sizes was obvious. The collision of their fists sent out shock waves almost visible to the naked eye, causing debris to scatter all around and the light fixtures to rattle violently. The massive body of the golden-eyed demon ape trembled, retreating several steps back before crashing heavily against the metal cage, bending its sturdy bars. Lu Sheng, who had met the ape's force, was also pushed back. In the monitoring room, seeing this scene unfold on the screen made many officers speechless. None of them had expected Lu Sheng to go head-on with the golden-eyed demon ape, who was known for its overwhelming strength. General Yu's eyes sparkled, a rare smile appeared on his face. Lu Sheng slowly lifted his head. He was impressed by the demon ape who was able to withstand his tenfold stellar technique, massaging his right arm. Lu Sheng looked at the golden-eyed demon ape, who was furious yet also visibly shocked. Lu Sheng grinned, revealing a smile both terrifying and chilling. Lu Sheng looked at the beast in its eyes and said it was worthy of being his dinner. After saying that, Lu Sheng took a deep breath. The next moment, a brilliant golden light shone from his eyes, breath of the flame, scorching like fire. The air behind him began to warp subtly as if 10 golden suns were slowly rising. He was ready to end everything with this single punch. Lu Sheng launched his fist fiercely. Inside the monitoring room, Richard seemed to witness something unbelievable, rendering him speechless. A grand master technique. Inside the monitoring room, General Yu shot up from his chair. His eyes widened, leaning forward, intently watching the young man on the screen whose punch shone as bright as the sun. Is this a grand master-level martial art technique? He asked himself. Soon the bright light faded. The massive monitor's display shifted from blurry to clear. Only then could everyone truly discern the scene presented on the screen. The vast monitoring room plunged into silence. On the screen, a young man with a calm expression was slowly retracting his fist. General Yu stood, his usually straight body trembling slightly. He was laughing uncontrollably, his eyes radiating. He had never imagined that in his lifetime he would witness someone so young manifesting the martial art of a grandmaster. The path to grandmaster had been unlocked for the young prodigy. Given time, the eastern region would surely have another grandmaster among its ranks. Qin was speechless, looking at Lu Sheng on the screen, realizing that Lu Sheng had surpassed him. Lu Sheng wasn't surprised by this outcome at all. His overall strength skyrocketed to such an extent that even he couldn't truly fathom the magnitude of his punch's power. He expanded his psychic power and realized that the exit was not far away. It was right behind the cage that held the golden-eyed demon ape, obscured by the ape's massive body. He hadn't noticed it earlier. Instead of choosing to leave, a curious thought emerged in Lu Sheng's mind. He approached the corpse of the golden-eyed demon ape, and at the spot where its cage once stood, he sat down with his legs crossed. Closing his eyes, he seemed to be quietly waiting for something. Many were puzzled by Lu Sheng's actions. General Yu watched the screen intently, his face always bearing a hint of amusement. Unconcerned with the questions from the fellow officers, he dismissed them with a wave of his hand, commanding, "Let Lu Sheng do as he wishes. Leave him be." The other officers exchanged bewildered glances. General Yu was allowing Lu Sheng to have his way. This military star selection that spanned the entire eastern region seemed to have lost its significance in Yu's eyes at this moment. A muscular figure suddenly burst out of the passageway. Rocky was panting heavily, trying hard to recover his energy. The beast he had just encountered was incredibly powerful. Even for him, it took a lot of effort to take it down. What's more, even though he had the protection of iron skin, he was still injured, and he could still feel the stinging pain. Thinking he was the first to arrive, Rocky glanced towards the other passages. After confirming that no one was present, he let out a sigh of relief. However, when his gaze shifted to a platform not far in front of him, his pupils constricted sharply. He saw someone. To be precise, a young man. But what truly startled Rocky was what was behind the young man. He saw a beast resembling a gorilla, standing about 10 meters tall, covered in jet-black hair, with limbs so muscular they seemed thicker than tree trunks. Just a distant glance emitted an overwhelming aura of fierceness, sending chills down his spine. However, what shocked Rocky the most wasn't encountering the gold-eyed demon ape. It was the fact that this gold-eyed demon ape was dead, merely a corpse. A huge bloody hole was torn open in its chest, and its entire body was deeply embedded into the wall, as if it had been punched hard into the wall and turned into a decorative specimen. He wanted to ask the young man on the platform but hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Bowing cautiously, he politely asked if he had passed the selection. Lu Sheng simply said one word: "Wait." At that moment, clear footsteps echoed from two nearby corridors. Rocky's expression instantly turned calm as he quickly looked in both directions. Soon after, two figures emerged from the corridors, one after the other. They all immediately recognized each other. Upon making eye contact, a mutual wariness was evident in their expressions. Then they both noticed the young man on the platform and the visually striking scene behind him. All three of them looked at the corpse of the demon ape, deeming it to be quite terrifying. They didn't expect such a powerful beast to be here. Rocky suddenly realized that this person might be the guardian of their final selection challenge. David and Amy frowned slightly, about to speak, when a clear voice rang out from the platform, saying, "Rocky is very smart." The trio immediately looked up. There, the handsome young man on the platform had already opened his eyes and stood up. Gazing down at them, he said he would give the trio some time to rest. Lu Sheng stretched out both hands, smiling invitingly, telling the three, as long as they defeat him, they will all pass the selection. Rocky eyes sparkled, revealing an "I knew it" expression on his face. Seeing that they didn't have to face the demon ape made them feel relieved. Yet the final challenge was a young man of similar age to them. The girl glanced at Lu Sheng, deeming him to be just an ordinary student and probably weak. Rocky sneered. He wondered if the Eastern Military District was mocking them. David also had an icy look on his face. Each of them took out a blue pill from their pockets and swallowed it, preparing to restore their strength. In their minds, the three of them were the strongest martial arts prodigies under 18 in the Eastern region. What did they have to fear from one person? Seeing the three of them concentrating on recovering, Lu Sheng revealed a satisfied smile, looking at his wristwatch, counting down every second. In the monitoring room, many officers' mouths twitched with speechlessness. Who would have thought that Lu Sheng would actually pretend to be the final boss of the selection, playing a game with the three prodigies? Even General Yu was amused, laughing heartily. He commented, "This Lu Sheng is interesting, very interesting." Shortly after, a few officers stood up and protested. They requested to end the selection immediately. They believed that this prodigy was much stronger than the others, possibly causing irrevocable physical and psychological damage to other prodigies. Chin noticed that these individuals were precisely the instructors backing the three participants. It made sense, worried that their prodigies would be broken by Lu Sheng's freakish strength. Snowy couldn't help but chuckle. Even the appearance of a peak level 4 demon ape hadn't elicited such a reaction from the crowd. This just showed how dangerous Lu Sheng had become in the eyes of everyone. Upon hearing the concerns raised, General Yu thought for a moment and ordered the supervisory team to be on high alert, ready to intervene at any time to ensure Lu Sheng didn't severely harm the trio. Richard was the most distressed at the moment. Not only had he just played himself, but he had also lost 3 units of valuable high-level beast marrow. Time passed quickly. Rocky stood up from the ground, cracking his neck and fist. The crisp cracking sounds from his joints indicated that he had restored around 90% of his energy. Amy had regained about 80%, and David around 90%. They believed they were more than prepared to face Lu Sheng. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screen, awaiting the showdown between the 4 young prodigies. Snowy whispered to herself, "This is going to be an epic battle." Everyone in the monitoring room braced themselves, ready for what was sure to be an unforgettable match. The eyes of the 3 burned with intensity as they fixed their gaze on Lu Sheng, who stood atop the demon ape's corpse. From his elevated position, Lu Sheng looked down at the trio, sensing the fiery battle spirit radiating from them, A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Pointing at them, he beckoned them to come up all at once. Rocky, however, laughed heartily, believing he alone was enough. Rocky fiercely pushed off the ground, charging straight at Lu Sheng. The other two didn't seem to mind. They thought they could use Rocky to test the gatekeeper's strength. Both were well aware that among the three of them, Rocky was the strongest. And now, Rocky had already leaped into the air, his right fist raised high. With a wildly unrestrained posture, he aimed a fierce punch directly at Lu Sheng. They all thought Lu Sheng might not even be able to withstand a single punch from Rocky. Yet Lu Sheng, standing at the very center of the platform, calmly lifted a hand, blocking the punch with just a single finger. He then, with an effortless motion, counterattacked. Yawning, a silhouette was sent flying backward at a blistering speed, traveling dozens of meters before shooting straight into the corridor he came from. David and Amy stood dumbfounded, their gazes fixed on Lu Sheng, who was still looking down at them from his superior position, his face bearing that same serene and nonchalant expression. Pointing at the two, he asked if they were planning to come at him one by one as well. David and Amy were stunned. The hairs on the backs of their necks stood on end, and a cold chill began at the base of their spine, quickly spreading throughout their bodies. This young man defeated Rocky with just one finger? Amy spoke with difficulty, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just witnessed and needed confirmation. David replied with a troubled expression. He had heard of martial artists who, in their youth, recklessly consume supplements that mess up their internal hormones, causing their bodies to stop developing prematurely. So even in their 30s or 40s, they still look youthful. He thought Lu Sheng was one of those. Amy's face was filled with horror, saying, "The military is so cunning." She then claimed that the military deliberately sent someone like Lu Sheng to deceive them, aiming to catch them off guard. Lu Sheng, having overheard their whispered conversation, rolled his eyes. Lu Sheng smiled, proposing another challenge. If they can make Lu Sheng step back or block just one of his attacks, then it will count as them passing. David and Amy exchanged glances. Without much hesitation, the two made a simultaneous decision, demonstrating their perfect synergy. Amy suddenly exploded in a flash of electricity, disappearing in an instant. David, too, took a deep breath, releasing his psychic power. In the blink of an eye, many purple spikes shot out in front of him, moving so fast they were almost impossible to catch with the naked eye. Lu Sheng's eyes gleamed, a small smile gracing his lips. He reached out, trying to snatch the spikes from the air as if catching flies with his bare hand. Hope flashed across David's face, and he muttered, "No matter how powerful Lu Sheng is, underestimating a psychic master, especially a second-level one, is bound to be his regret." Before he could finish, his expression froze, eyes bulging, as if witnessing something inconceivable. Before him, countless arms sprouted from Lu Sheng, each snatching a black spike. All spikes rested in Lu Sheng's palm before falling to the ground with a delicate tinkling sound. Lu Sheng shook his head, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. He then shifted his gaze from the dumbstruck David to Amy, who was rapidly closing in. "Your turn, little Pikachu," he quipped, as Amy, her hand shaped like a claw, aimed for Lu Sheng's neck. The comment distracted her. In that brief moment of distraction, a voice whispered in her ear. The next thing she knew, a pair of slender yet powerful hands gently gripped her wrists. Instinctively, she tried to pull away, but the hands held her fast, immovable as iron. Lu Sheng looked deep into Amy's eyes and calmly told her to electrocute him. Amy thought Lu Sheng was crazy. She unleashed all her elemental power. Streams of deep blue electricity erupted from within her, countless thin lightning waves traveling from her wrists into Lu Sheng's arms. Amy gritted her teeth, channeling all her elemental power into the attack. For a brief moment, Lu Sheng's body stiffened, feeling a prickling numbness and sharp pain. However, as his internal energy began to circulate, this numbing sensation and stiffness lessened, especially when he began to utilize the natural breathing technique. All remnants of the numbness and pain faded rapidly, and thus, Lu Sheng's fourth unique breathing technique was born, the breath of thunder. This was the true reason Lu Sheng challenged Amy. After he had fully mastered the thunder breath, and the electric current from Amy no longer had any evident effect, Lu Sheng let go of her wrists, laughing heartily, telling her that she did well and she have now passed the selection. Her cute little face was flushed red from the exertion of releasing electricity, and Amy was momentarily stunned upon hearing Lu Sheng's words. She stood frozen for a good 5 seconds before her face slowly lit up with immense surprise and excitement. Her face became even more red as if she couldn't quite believe it, mumbling to herself in disbelief. She stood straight and saluted Lu Sheng, expressing her sincere and heartfelt gratitude, saying thank you and calling Lu Sheng an instructor. Lu Sheng looked at Amy and nodded, telling her she didn't need to thank him. It was her outstanding performance that earned Lu Sheng's approval. Lu Sheng didn't actually know Amy's name, so he had dubbed her Pikachu. He found it rather apt. After all, they both had electric abilities. How different could they be? David and Rocky had complex expressions on their faces, marked by deep disappointment and defeat. While the two of them were lost in their thoughts, 2 men in military uniforms walked out from a nearby passage. One of the officers looked at Lu Sheng with a mix of complexity. Telling him the commander said Lu Sheng had his fun. It's time to return and prepare for the Military Star Award ceremony. Lu Sheng nodded in agreement. Having said that, Lu Sheng followed the officer towards the side door to leave. As for the remaining officer, he looked at the trio with an almost pitying gaze. Amy was completely perplexed at the moment, a sinking feeling of unease welling up in her heart. She asked the real instructor, what did that officer mean just now? She thought the military star was supposed to be her, and wasn't that guy the gatekeeper for the final stage of the selection? The officer looked at the 3 of them with a sympathetic expression, explaining, the guy who just left is also a candidate for this selection, just like the 3 of them. However, he arrived here 20 minutes before they did. And there isn't really a gatekeeper for the final stage of this selection, but rather a beast. Ah, right over there. The officer pointed in a certain direction. The 3 of them followed his pointing finger. What they saw was a golden-eyed demon ape specimen nailed to the wall. The man said the beast used to be alive, with a strength of a peak level 4. It was meant to be a challenge for those candidates with the ability to reach the final stage, a collective target for all of them. But Lu Sheng, he's just too monstrous. He killed the golden-eyed demon ape all by himself. After finishing it off, he wasn't even satisfied, so he posed as the gatekeeper just to toy with them all. This officer seemed to be quite talkative, ranting on without a break. But the trio, particularly Amy, couldn't really focus on anything he said afterward. The only thing that resonated was, that guy, just like them, was a candidate for this selection. The elation on Amy's face froze, and she looked as if she had been turned to stone, standing still in disbelief. Countless voices echoed in Amy's mind, all converging into one overwhelming realization. Meanwhile, inside the selection pathway, Lee tightly clung to a level 4 beast, burning it with all his elemental power. The creature struggled desperately, but in the end, it was consumed by the flames. The young man leaned against the wall, gasping heavily for air. Lee was panting hard, feeling the sharp pain and throbbing aches from multiple wounds on his body. His face contorted momentarily in pain. Extending his right hand, Lee tried to summon a ball of flame. Yet despite his utmost effort, he could only produce a tiny spark. Although he was entirely drained of energy, what did that matter to him? After all, he had just succeeded in killing a level 4 beast. Even Lee himself could hardly believe he had achieved such a spectacular feat. He imagined the instructors and officers monitoring the selection must be utterly astonished by his innate talent and strength. Smiling with confidence, he brushed his hair back and struck what he believed to be a suave pose. Just as Lee was basking in pride, a tall and slender officer holding some documents suddenly jumped in front of him. Lee flinched in surprise, but quickly recognized that the instructor held a tablet, uploading Lee's results. Without even looking up, the officer told him to stop advancing. The selection was over. He should pack up and prepare to leave with him. Lee froze in place. The next moment, his face was lit up with great anticipation. Eagerly, he asked about his results, wanting to know if he was ranked first and had won the military star selection. The officer looked up, sizing Li up with a puzzled expression. He inquired if Li was still half asleep since the military star had been decided half an hour ago. The reason the selection dragged on until now was mainly due to… The officer paused, then decided that explaining further would be pointless. Once again, he urged Li to leave with him, but added that Li's rank was likely somewhere after 5th place. Li stood still. He was dumbfounded. Not first, not second, but somewhere after the 5th? He was Li, the same Li who single-handedly defeated a level 4 beast on his first try. The instructor looked at him with pity and shook his head. In the monitoring room, General Yu decided to grant Amy a spot in the beast blood pool. He recognized that Amy had her challenges too, and had some emotional damage. The girl's instructor stood up, saluting in gratitude to General Yu. Everyone knew that only the top 3 candidates would earn a spot in the blood pool. Lu Sheng was the undisputed first, Rocky took second, while Amy and David were neck and neck. However, David, being a rare psychic practitioner, had an edge. The instructors were pleased with the outcome. Upon leaving the selection pathway, he was guided to a bigger room than he had stayed in before. The room had been cleaned, and 2 types of supplements were placed on the small table beside the bed. Lu Sheng picked up the energy replenishment elixir from the table, uncapped it, and poured it into his mouth. Savoring the effects of the elixir, he found it rather underwhelming. The refreshing sensation it provided lasted only for a brief few minutes. Compared to the supplements he crafted himself, this was subpar. Lying on the bed, Lu Sheng suddenly thought of Ling Su. He wondered how the supplement was progressing. Ever since he left Whitewater City, he hadn't been in contact with her. After consuming the supplement, Lu Sheng sat on the bed, immersing himself in the thunder-breathing technique he had recently obtained through the help of Amy aka Pikachu. It seemed as though he could hear a deep rumbling, much like the sound of thunder rolling within storm clouds, echoing within his chest. The circulating breath stimulated his entire body, including his muscles, blood, and bones. He felt an increase in both strength and speed. This technique synthesized the advantages of both the flame-breathing and wind-breathing, yet it didn't achieve the peak of either. Overall, it was a balanced and comprehensive breathing technique. After experimenting with the thunder-breathing, Lu Sheng sprawled out on the bed, looking at the ceiling. The bed wasn't particularly soft, but Lu Sheng felt utterly relaxed. For the longest time, he had been like a tightly drawn bowstring, never getting a moment of relaxation. Now, with the results of the military star selection settled, he could finally take a rest. He reminisced about the times he and his best friend stayed up all night playing games, sleeping in class, and experiencing the life of a normal high school student. Lately, he wondered if he was pushing himself too hard. Lu Sheng raised a hand, peering through the gaps between his fingers at the ceiling above, lost in thought. What did a future 10,000 years from now have to do with him? Without the weight of that distant future, he could lead a relaxed and carefree life. In 10,000 years, he would be long gone. How many of his descendants would even remember him? One might not even know about their next life. Why not live this one to the fullest and be content? He pondered. Wouldn't that be better? Lu Sheng's thoughts began to drift, and it felt as if something inside him was slowly drifting away too. Yet in the end, the fingers he held up before his eyes slowly clenched into a fist. His expression became serious and resolute. Having witnessed the future firsthand, how could he pretend he hadn't? Having made a choice, how could he easily give up? He wasn't just fighting for the people 10,000 years from now, but also for himself. To give it your all, gritting your teeth, persisting even when broken, not everyone can have such conviction. Lu Sheng's eyes settled into a calm state. He was here, he saw, and he is willing to die for it. This was his choice, his desire. Closing his eyes, he felt he had broken another bottleneck. No time to procrastinate, and it was time to continue striving to become stronger. He entered the dream realm once again. Upon entering the dream realm, the first thing Lu Sheng did was pull up his personal record to inspect. There were some minor changes this time. Name, Lu Sheng. Gender, male. Lifespan, born 297 martial years, died in 432 martial years. Martial strength, 7th level Grandmaster. His lifetime achievements had a new entry, participated in the military star selection, and emerged in the first place. The overall data was roughly the same as what Lu Sheng saw last time, only looked a bit better. There was no change in the martial arts level, which remained at the 7th level Grandmaster. However, his character evaluation gained an additional half star, reaching 3.5 stars. This was probably related to Lu Sheng's decision to join the Eastern Military District and eventually become a major general there. This also meant that Lu Sheng lived 20 years less than before, dying in a large-scale battle against a beast. He wondered if he could have broken through to the 8th level Grandmaster if he hadn't died, but quickly dismissed the thought. Such mundane and meaningless speculations weren't worth delving into. Suddenly, Lu Sheng noticed something on his profile that made him raise an eyebrow. The name listed under the spouse category was Snowy? Lu Sheng was stunned. He pulled out an image of a wedding photo and saw Snowy's tall, slender figure with her cold yet stunning beauty. Lu Sheng realized that she was much older than him. How did they end up marrying? It felt utterly ridiculous to Lu Sheng. However, thinking about it, becoming the rising military star of the Eastern Military District meant he would inevitably join their ranks. And since Snowy was also part of the same district, given their past relationship and growing closeness over time, maybe such a union wasn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. He shook his head helplessly. From now on, it would be difficult for him to look directly at Snowy. Lu Sheng needs to do something to calm down. With that thought, Lu Sheng swiftly headed towards the position of the female Grand Master. An officer came to invite Lu Sheng to the military star selection ceremony. Lu Sheng followed behind the officer, heading deeper into the base. They eventually reached the entrance of a grand conference hall. Pushing the door open, all eyes within the room turned to Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng saw Snowy and Qin. The other instructors and students were present too, including Rocky and the other two he had met during the selection process. He also noticed a middle-aged man in military uniform, gold stars adorning his shoulder, exuding an aura of imposing authority. Lu Sheng guessed that this man must be the highest-ranking officer for this year's selection, Major General Yu of the Eastern Military District. Upon seeing Lu Sheng entering the room, General Yu greeted him with a warm smile as if he was seeing Lu Sheng as a younger family member of his, beckoning him to come over. At that moment, nearly all eyes in the conference hall were fixated on Lu Sheng. Then, one by one, badges and rewards were presented by the officers. Lu Sheng's badge was a brilliant gold. General Yu personally pinned it on him. Its material was the same as that of a Grandmaster's badge, only differing in design. General Yu hoped that one day Lu Sheng would wear the true Grandmaster's badge. With a solemn expression, Lu Sheng replied calmly while putting his hand into a fist, "That day won't be too far off." General Yu was momentarily taken aback, but then he burst into joyful laughter. The expressions of everyone in the room were mixed. Hearing these words, none of the people doubted Lu Sheng, and Lu Sheng said it without coming across as arrogant. It seemed as though he was merely stating an inevitable fact. Every year, the Eastern Military District held the military star selection, but none have ever been treated by General Yu with such a demeanor. Lu Sheng was the first. Subsequently, it is time to give out the rewards. Those ranked in the top 10 each received a reward of vials of beast blood. Lu Sheng received one as well. It was a small vial, containing about 300 milliliters of a red liquid. With a grand gesture, General Yu led the way out of the conference hall. Lu Sheng, Rocky, David, and Amy, followed by their respective instructors, while the rest could only watch them with envious eyes. They knew that they were about to enter the beast blood pool and the marrow pool. Only those in the top 3 had the privilege to enter the beast blood pool. However, due to the exceptional performance of the prodigious Lu Sheng, General Yu, in high spirits, even added an extra slot for 4th place. Li thought of the full pool of beast blood and beast marrow which he had no chance of getting. The once arrogant young boy suddenly felt that the small vial of beast blood he held was no longer enticing. Soon, they arrived in a brightly lit room filled with various apparatuses and tubes. General Yu turned to Lu Sheng and the others. instructing them to remove their clothing and prepare to enter the cultivation chambers. Except for Lu Sheng, everyone was led to cultivation chambers filled with beast blood. After undressing, they all entered their respective chambers, while Lu Sheng was led by General Yu to the beast marrow pool. Lu Sheng saw before him a cultivation chamber about 2 meters high and 1 meter in diameter, filled halfway with a pale golden liquid. He curiously gazed at the amber-like fluid flowing gently behind the clear glass and couldn't help but ask, "Why is it only half filled? Why not fill it up?" Snowy rolled her eyes and said exasperatedly, questioning if Lu Sheng was aware of the cost of these valuable beast marrows. This alone cost over 1.5 billion, and that's just the cost. If sold, the price would be 10 times more. Lu Sheng nodded in amazement, but then asked seriously, "What if it's not enough for him to absorb? Can he get a refill?" Snowy was speechless. Another officer chimed in, chuckling. After stripping down, Lu Sheng entered the marrow pool. Snowy looked him over and couldn't help but blush while admiring the fluidity and perfection of his muscles and his tall, proportionate physique, commenting softly that she didn't expect that. Lu Sheng had a pretty good build. With a splash, Lu Sheng jumped into the cultivation chamber. As he submerged, the pale gold liquid reached up to his neck. It felt as if needles were desperately pressing against his skin, trying to burrow into him. He dove deeper, letting the pale golden liquid engulf him completely. Now, the energies inside the chamber, which felt almost alive, rapidly surged into his body. The overwhelming energy rampaged inside him like a raging flood. Every inch of his skin, every fiber of his flesh, even every strand of his hair, was immersed in the embrace of energy, greedily absorbing it. The influx of massive energy propelled his physique further down the path of the indestructible golden body technique. His blood energy level was skyrocketing every second, roaring through his veins, evolving to a consistency as thick as mercury. David was the first to emerge from the cultivation chamber. Throughout the process, there was a constant crackling sound from his body, indicative of his rapidly advancing martial prowess and vastly improved physical strength. An officer nearby handed him a large towel. David took it, wiping away the residual liquid. The officer complimented David, saying he nearly drained the chamber, truly worthy of being called a prodigy. David chuckled, but then curiously asked, "What about the others?" The officer glanced to the side, informing him that he was the first to come out. Upon hearing that he was the first to come out of the chamber, the smugness he had just felt disappeared instantly. The officer comforted him that he relies on psychic power and not physical strength. David knew that the longer one stayed in the beast blood pool, the more energy they absorbed, and the greater the benefits received. Minutes later, Amy also came out of the chamber. She was extremely excited that she would soon break the bottleneck and become a level 4 martial artist. Finally, Rocky's chamber opened. Among the three, Rocky was the strongest, and through the beast's blood, he directly advanced to the 5th level. David and Amy's pupils constricted slightly, their hearts throbbing with shock. Seeing that Rocky reached level 5 without fully absorbing the first chamber was very surprising to them. The officer next to them said they got it wrong. This was the second batch. Sure enough, the two saw an empty container next to Rocky's cultivation chamber, still containing some remnants of the beast's blood. The two thought to themselves, in the second chamber, which means, at about the same time as them, Rocky managed to absorb 2/3 more of the beast's blood than they did. Absorbing 2/3 more of the beast's blood, one can only imagine the immense benefits Rocky obtained. The look in David and Amy's eyes when they looked at Rocky became a lot more complicated. Just as Rocky was about to get dressed, he took a few steps he couldn't believe his eyes. General Yu walked up to the cultivation chamber, looking at the boy with closed eyes inside the transparent glass, and asked, "How did it go? Was it smooth?" Snowy nodded, smiling, and said, "It's just that the consumption of the special marrow is a bit fast." Watching the pale gold liquid level that was about to drop below eye level, General Yu casually said, "Give Lu Sheng as much as he could absorb. Pour everything from the reserve chamber to ensure the best results." Suddenly, A staff member mentioned that the extra beast marrow in the reserve chamber was already used up. General Yu paused for a moment. His expression became serious. Staring at the boy with closed eyes in the cultivation chamber, he instructed the staff to quickly check the warehouse, remarking that he wanted to see just how much of a surprise this kid could give him. Another container of beast marrow was poured into the cultivation chamber, submerging Lu Sheng's head. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, it rapidly diminished. Lu Sheng repeatedly honed his indestructible golden body technique over and over, tempering every muscle and bone in his body. Another 2 containers of 4th-level beast marrow were brought forward. General Yu's face remained expressionless, but his hands behind his back were trembling slightly. "Continue," he ordered. Lu Sheng felt as if countless volcanoes inside him had suddenly erupted. He could distinctly sense energy continuously flowing into his body, seemingly inexhaustible. Just half a container of this unique marrow could bring such immense energy, aiding Lu Sheng in completing the first phase of the indestructible golden body. If this is the power of 4th-level beast marrow, how terrifying would the 5th, 6th, 7th, or even higher levels be? It's almost unimaginable. At the same time, the staff looked toward General Yu and asked if they should continue. Everyone in the room glanced at the side of the cultivation chamber, which had over a dozen empty glass containers. General Yu's lips quivered slightly. Even as a 7th-level grandmaster and also a major general, he was finding it hard to keep calm. He ordered them to keep adding until Lu Sheng couldn't absorb any more. He ordered with a surge of anger. "If this kid doesn't join the Eastern Military District in the future, General Yu swears that he will skin him alive." The cost of a single container of the unique marrow was over 1 billion. He had already spent over 10 billion. Was there a black hole inside Lu Sheng? Lu Sheng saw that every bone in his body had turned golden, gleaming brilliantly. The first phase of the indestructible golden body was complete. Between his bones and muscles, something seemed to be germinating and growing. He had successfully advanced to a 4th-level martial artist. His physique and martial arts had made a monumental breakthrough, and his overall combat capability was about to witness an unprecedented enhancement. The chamber suddenly burst open, and General Yu could hardly believe that Lu Sheng had absorbed all the beast's marrow. Lu Sheng leaped out of the cultivation chamber. As his feet touched the ground, the floor cracked beneath him. A tall, statuesque figure stood there, with droplets of golden liquid trickling down the contours of his chiseled muscles, creating small puddles on the floor. The female officers and Snowy in the room all stared at Lu Sheng. His entire body radiated a golden glow. When Rocky, David, and the others arrived, they knew that the gap between them and Lu Sheng had grown even larger. Snowy gave a bitter smile, acknowledging that in just 2 months, Lu Sheng had become even more powerful than her. General Yu's gaze was intense, and suddenly he took a step forward, reaching out to grab the spirited young man in front of him. However, Lu Sheng didn't avoid the grasp. Instead, his face lit up with excitement. He tensed his right arm, preparing for the forceful punch. 10-fold stellar force, Grand Master technique, 10 suns in the sky. Lu Sheng's body emits a fiery glow. The fists and broad palms clashed hard against each other. Lu Sheng stepped back several times, leaving cracks in the hard floor with every step. Shaking his sore arm, Lu Sheng gave a wry smile and said, "General Yu used too much force on a 4th-level martial artist." General Yu's eyes sparkled, and he burst into hearty laughter. The aura of a grand master surged around him like tidal waves. He complimented Lu Sheng, saying that his combat strength didn't look like someone who just advanced to the 4th level. Lu Sheng spreads his hands helplessly, but he is at the 4th level. General Yu, with an annoyed look on his face, retorted, "He doesn't care if Lu Sheng is at the 4th level or not. After consuming 15 billion worth of his beast marrow, getting 1 slap from him is still considered light." The officers and students who rushed over, including Lu Sheng himself, were in shock at the scattered containers labeled 4th-level beast marrow across the floor. Even if they knew that General Yu would not use his full strength, the attack was still a genuine blow from a level 7 Grandmaster. A Grandmaster-level martial artist has a minimum combat power of 1 million. How could anyone like Lu Sheng easily withstand such force? At this very moment, the gazes of all the officers and students in the chamber room shifted towards Lu Sheng. Rocky, David, and Amy were utterly dumbfounded. A direct hit from a Grand Master and 15 billion worth of the beast marrow. They always knew there was a wide gap between them and Lu Sheng, but never imagined it would be this big. At the 4th level, Lu Sheng might already possess the combat power of 500,000, which is equivalent to a peak level 6 martial artist. The overwhelming force overshadowed everything, and they couldn't fathom how Lu Sheng managed to take on General Yu's attack. Just thinking of this sent shivers down their spines, filling them with a sense of terror. David trembled from head to toe, while Amy felt as if her soul had been ripped out. Snowy and Chin gazed at Lu Sheng, thinking about the fact that he was still a high school student who hadn't even taken the unified exam yet. At that thought, Chin turned to Snowy, who nodded in agreement. They both reached the same conclusion. Lu Sheng would undoubtedly score the top in the unified exam this year. Rocky stared at the scattered containers on the ground, recalling that Lu Sheng, of the same age as him, was already having a combat power of 500,000. What would happen when he advances to level 5, or level 6? Would he truly be on par with a Grandmaster? Recalling that now that Lu Sheng had already displayed the will of a Grandmaster, becoming one was inevitable. Only then did Lu Sheng realize something. He had absorbed a significant amount of 4th-level beast marrow. No wonder he felt that the energy was a bit exaggerated earlier, and for some reason it had been continuously replenishing. He gave an awkward smile while thanking General Yu. After all, it was worth 15 billion. General Yu wasn't stingy. The favor General Yu has shown to Lu Sheng is indeed very generous. General Yu waved his hand dismissively, saying lightly, telling Lu Sheng there was no need to thank him. When Lu Sheng gets on the battlefield, just slay a few more beasts. That way it won't be a waste of all this beast marrow from my eastern military district. Lu Sheng nodded, clasping his hands together in a respectful gesture. With a serious expression, he believed that facing the enemy on the battlefield was every martial artist's duty. He would let his actions speak for him. General Yu looked at the young man with satisfaction, as if he saw a glimpse of a marshal in him. Turning around with a joyful laugh, he briefly bid farewell to Lu Sheng. However, he believed that the next time they met, Lu Sheng would surely become a Grand Master, and he was confident that day wasn't far off. Snowy approached Lu Sheng, informing him that the military star selection dad concluded successfully. She offered her congratulations, and then inquired about Lu Sheng's preparation for the unified exam. When she asked which university he was aiming for, Lu Sheng was puzzled and wanted to listen to Snowy for recommendations. Snowy smiled, saying, "With Lu Sheng's current strength, any university in the country is at his disposal. If Lu Sheng is looking at the eastern region, then Dongning Martial University is the best choice. After all, Lu Sheng was originally from Dongning Province, so he'll undoubtedly receive special treatment and benefits there." However, her expression suddenly turned serious. This was her opinion and recommendations before. A month ago, she would have surely advised Lu Sheng to attend there. But now, Snowy wanted Lu Sheng to head to the royal capital, Snowy continued, her voice earnest. Because in the royal capital, there are 7 divine martial universities, the birthplaces of their nation's martial arts. It's where the entire nation's most elite martial talents gather. After joining one of the 7 divine martial universities, if Lu Sheng could break the record of the divine martial tower, he could earn the favor of a martial saint. Under the guidance of a martial saint, there's a high possibility of breaking through and becoming an 8th-level grandmaster. Martial saint, a distant and unfamiliar title. Snowy's expression grew solemn. Martial saints are the pillars of their world, possessing martial prowess beyond imagination. Their authority even surpasses that of military districts and national powers. Currently, their nation boasts 3 9th-level martial saints: the Supreme Martial Saint, Zhao Ji, the Jade Martial Saint, Tan Zhong-yu, and the only female martial saint, the Dark Star Martial Saint, Lin Zhengyue. Lu Sheng recalled viewing the timeline in the dream realm. At this stage, the strongest in this world were only at the 9th level, which meant that the martial saints stood at the pinnacle. After a brief moment of silence, Snowy spoke first. She can't make decisions for Lu Sheng because she can't predict his future. But Snowy believes Lu Sheng's future may reach farther than anyone else's, perhaps even beyond that of a martial saint. Lu Sheng looked at her, slightly surprised. He hadn't expected Snowy to hold him in such high regard, but considering his 3 martial techniques, passed down by the strongest level 11 martial artists in the future, along with the knowledge and martial arts experience spanning 10,000 years in the future, he was confident that his future achievements would indeed surpass that of a martial saint. From a distance, Qin watched the two. Hearing Snowy speculate that Lu Sheng, currently at only the 4th level, might one day surpass the level of a martial saint's, he was initially skeptical. However, in an instant, he felt he might have misjudged. The unparalleled talent that Lu Sheng demonstrated suggested that his future might not be so limited after all. Snowy looked downcast, remarking, "The highest rank in the entire military district is the Grand Marshal, who has only reached the 8th level Grandmaster level. He's never been able to break through to the 9th level Martial Saint." Lu Sheng asked, "Even with the resources of the entire military district, can he not break through?" Qin slowly approached, shaking his head. "It's far more complicated than he thought. There may be only 1 level difference between the 8th and 9th levels, but to cultivate an 8th level Grandmaster, the military has already exhausted all its top-tier resources. The 9th level isn't something that can be achieved just by relying on resources. The gap between the 2 levels is immense and almost unfathomable, hence why 8th level is still the Grandmaster, while the 9th level is the Saint. Having a 9th grade martial saint has always been a long-cherished wish of their military. Alas, it remains unfulfilled." Snowy sighed. As an officer of the Eastern Military District, she should encourage Lu Sheng to stay here, but she doesn't want to hold Lu Sheng back. She hopes that Lu Sheng can choose his own path, and she will always support Lu Sheng's decision. Hearing this, Lu Sheng's heart skipped a beat. Standing before him was Snowy, clad in a deep blue military uniform. Under the brim of her cap, she had a perfect oval face, perfect skin, and exquisite, stunning features. He thought about the potential future if he stayed in the Eastern Military District. He might indeed end up marrying Snowy, as the information from the Dream Realm suggested. Avoiding Snowy's gaze, he said with conviction, "Lu Sheng is grateful for all of Snowy's help. Just like his promise to General Yu, Lu Sheng will one day set foot on the battlefield to defend their homeland. It's both his duty and obligation. Lu Sheng will never forget or let the Eastern Military District and Snowy down." Snowy's face lit up with a relieved smile. Looking deeply into Lu Sheng's eyes, she looked forward to the day Lu Sheng returned to the Eastern Military District. After a few seconds, they both blushed, and Lu Sheng coughed awkwardly. He didn't want to linger in this odd atmosphere alone with Snowy. But Qin seemed to have noticed something. Looking left and right, he appeared as if he'd discovered a whole new world. Before parting, Snowy told Lu Sheng that the military star selection was over. The unified exam is just around the corner. She wanted Lu Sheng to make sure to get a certificate from the Psychic Association before the exam. Then, he will have access to the StarNet, allowing him to freely trade goods online. Lu Sheng nodded in acknowledgement, ready to pack up and head out. Watching Lu Sheng, Snowy hesitated. Words were lingering on the tip of her tongue, emotions she wanted to express, but she just couldn't find the right words. As he grew distant, Qin approached, a mischievous grin on his face. In all these years of knowing Snowy, that's the first time he's seen such an expression from her. Perhaps Snowy have some feeling for Lu Sheng. Before he could finish, Snowy, flustered, landed a couple of playful punches on him, shushing his presumptuous remarks. Frustrated, she stormed off, hiding behind a door. There, she took a moment, heart fluttering, realizing this was the first time she'd felt this way about someone of the opposite gender, and it just happened to a man who's much younger than her. After a day's rest, above a forest located in the Dongning province, a massive black military helicopter hovered over a hill. The cabin door slid open. Amid the gushing winds that tousled everyone's hair, Snowy shouted over the noise, asking Lu Sheng if he was sure about alighting here. Clutching the helicopter's door, backpack strapped to his back, Lu Sheng turned, giving them a reassuring smile. Snowy was about to instruct the helicopter to lower its altitude so she could release a ladder, but before she could, Lu Sheng said there was no need. He waved a final goodbye, then released his grip and plunged towards the ground below. Stunned, Snowy could only watch as Lu Sheng rapidly diminished in size. Beside her, Qin darted forward, peering out in disbelief. Calling Lu Sheng crazy! That's a 200-meter drop! Lu Sheng wasn't even wearing a parachute. He is out of his mind! Snowy, ever the calm one, simply replied, "He won't get hurt." She stared below, realizing that the young man's abilities had long surpassed both of theirs. Relieved, Qin let out a sigh, shaking his head with a complicated expression. On the mountain below, a father and son were hiking. The dad held his son's hand, guiding him step by step. Suddenly, the little boy looked up and pointed to a figure in the sky. Above them, a dot rapidly grew larger, a silhouette descending from the heavens, enveloped in a golden glow. "Is that Superman?" the boy asked. Soon the man's gaze followed his son's. His pupils constricted the next second. He knew that the figure from the sky must have been a very powerful martial artist, at least of the 6th level, perhaps a grandmaster. The gales whipped past his ears. Lu Sheng, having undergone the first phase of immortal golden body refinement, felt every inch of his body, including muscles, bones, skin, and even his internal organs, undergo an immense transformation. Far surpassing the usual 4th, 5th, or even 6th level martial artists, he landed heavily on the mountain peak. The terrifying force shattered the ground beneath him, creating a massive crater. Looking down at the city below, he could still feel the vigorous energy coursing through him after reaching the 4th level. It might take about a month for this energy to fully integrate. He dashed forward, making his way down the mountain path. Lu Sheng noticed that his inner strength was golden in hue. Glancing at his hands, they seemed unbreakable. The father and son watched Lu Sheng in awe. The father, being a martial artist himself, managed to catch a brief glimpse of the falling figure. An extremely young-looking teenager, appearing to be around 18 years old, just like a high schooler. And this high schooler had just fallen hundreds of meters without a scratch? The man chuckled, shaking his head, thinking to himself that maybe Lu Sheng was equipped with some high-tech gear. Yet his expression was complex. Looking at the crater Lu Sheng left behind, his son persisted, asking his father once again, "Was that big brother a Superman?" The father took his son's hand, trying to divert the boy's attention, saying, "There's no Superman, they're just shooting a movie." The boy followed his father uphill, albeit reluctantly, his eyes fixed on the direction where Lu Sheng had disappeared. In the young boy's heart, Lu Sheng was definitely Superman. He thought to himself, his dad just won't admit it. Lu Sheng quickly arrived at the Psychic Association. The place seemed deserted, and he made his way directly to the front desk. There, he found a young man engrossed in his smartphone playing Genshin Impact. When he saw Lu Sheng's recommendation letter, his expression shifted to one of complete astonishment. He looked at Lu Sheng, who seemed to have no psychic power, but given that the recommendation was from the military district, he treated Lu Sheng with respect. After all, he himself was formerly from the military. The young man promptly got up to lead Lu Sheng further inside. Following the young man, Lu Sheng entered a room where he saw 3 people, 2 young women and a balding middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was visibly shaking, intently focusing on controlling a metallic orb. As Lu Sheng observed, orbs of sweat formed on the man's forehead as he tried guiding the orb through a glass wall. Suddenly the ball wobbled, and not long after, it collided with the glass, causing a clear, shattering sound. Large cracks spread rapidly across the surface of the glass wall. The middle-aged man's concentration wavered, and the metallic orb dropped to the ground. Distraught, he stared at the orb. This was already his 6th attempt within the last decade. A staff member from the side consoled him, suggesting that breakthroughs at the man's age were hard to come by. Tearfully, the balding man left the room. Next up was a girl named Sophia. She had long, wavy blonde hair and a striking figure. The staff seemed familiar with her, noting that this was her third time taking the test. Sophia responded with a huff, boasting that she became a level 1 psychic at the age of 20. Being 25 now, she felt that failing the level 2 exam a few times was nothing unusual. The staff member now turned his attention to Lu Sheng. The young man from the front desk gestured toward him and mentioned that he came with a recommendation from Snowy and had a referral letter from the military district. Sophia looked at Lu Sheng with curiosity, finding it hard to believe that such a young face could belong to a psychic practitioner. But regardless of Lu Sheng's abilities, she found him very handsome. Drawing closer, she introduced herself and complimented Lu Sheng on becoming a psychic practitioner at such a young age. She generously offered her help should he have any questions. Lu Sheng nodded in gratitude, then inquired if the task the bald man was attempting earlier was part of the assessment. Sophia, speaking from experience, began explaining to him the stages of the test. The first stage measures the strength and purity of one's psychic power using a machine. The second stage is a practical test where participants are required to control a certain number of small balls and guide them through holes in fragile glass walls without touching them. She explained that the glass is so delicate that a mere touch would shatter it. The bald man, being a level 1 psychic practitioner, had only one layer of glass to navigate through. But for her, as a level 2 psychic practitioner, she'd have to pass through 5 layers. Sophia clasped her hands and prayed fervently, hoping for a smooth process. When it was her turn, she nodded to the staff and quickly approached the machine, placing her hand on it. Soon, the hexagonal column lit up, and her results were displayed. The screen showed a psychic power strength of 11.33 and a purity level of 1.02. It was a borderline pass. Seeing this, Sophia breathed a sigh of relief. Now came the practical test. Unlike the level 1 assessment, a level 2 psychic had to control 15 metallic orbs simultaneously. The number of glass layers these orbs had to pass through was 5. However, the time allotted for this task was shortened to 20 seconds. With a solemn expression, Sophia used her psychic abilities to levitate the 15 metallic orbs in front of her. She looked visibly tense. Sophia took a deep breath and then rapidly controlled the 15 metallic orbs to shoot forward. Lu Sheng quickly realized that controlling 15 of these metallic orbs made out of mithril at the same time was a significant challenge for a level 2 psychic practitioner. At the same time, the psychic power needs to be restrained as much as possible. Participants need to simultaneously focus on 15 orbs and operate them closely. It looked far from easy. Sophia managed to swiftly pass the first layer of glass, full of confidence, and the second layer followed shortly after. She quickly adjusted their positions and managed to get through the third layer as well. Just as she was confident that she could reach the fourth layer, the staff member called out, stating that her first attempt had failed due to time being up. Deflated, Sophia didn't appear too upset. Taking a deep breath, she braced herself for another go. When she began, she picked up the pace from her previous attempt. The first 3 layers were smoothly cleared, the fourth was narrowly navigated, and with 12 seconds left, she headed for the 5th layer. Perhaps trying to make up for her previous mistake, Sophia tried to go faster. As a result, a few of the metallic orbs touched the fragile 5th glass wall. A shattering sound echoed through the room, and the orbs dropped to the ground. Sophia collapsed, her face twisted into a bitter smile. She had failed again. The staff members didn't say anything but asked if she'd like to try once more. Sophia understood that she was still a way off from becoming a level 2 psychic master. At this moment, a voice rang out, telling Sophia that she can make it. Everyone turned to find Lu Sheng, who approached Sophia with a calm demeanor. He noted that Sophia had the potential, but was employing the wrong method. He suggested that instead of only focusing on what's ahead, she should also keep an eye on what's behind. Sophia blinked, not understanding what he meant. Lu Sheng patiently explained that her method of adjusting each bead's position in front of each glass layer, then making them pass through and then adjusting again for the next glass layer was very time-consuming and very demanding on her psychic strength. This test, he surmised, was actually about a psychic's ability to compute and plan ahead. If she plans out which holes the orbs will pass through from the very beginning, and then connects those points, she will have a clear route through all 5 layers, Lu Sheng explained. All she has to do then is control the 15 orbs to follow 15 different paths. Sophia's eyes lit up, seemingly grasping the idea. The staff members pondered Lu Sheng's words, nodding in agreement. The staff looked at Lu Sheng with admiration, but still pointed out that accomplishing this strategy in such a short time frame, determining 15 routes and calculating distances and speeds, was incredibly challenging. Lu Sheng shook his head. For the average person, perhaps this calculation might seem overwhelming, but for a psychic practitioner, this method should be a piece of cake. As he spoke, Lu Sheng looked over at Sophia, signaling her to pay close attention, as Lu Sheng will only demonstrate this once. Sophia blinked in surprise, and the staff members wore the same expression of bewilderment. Then, the very next moment, they all watched in horror as all of the metallic orbs inside the box on the ground began to levitate, swarming closely together like a vast colony of bees. With a swift gesture towards the glass wall, Lu Sheng commanded the countless orbs. They dispersed instantly, shooting through the holes in the wall with incredible speed. The beads quickly coalesced into a massive block. Just as they approached the glass wall, the swarm abruptly scattered, rapidly passing through the round holes in the glass wall. The number of round holes in the glass wall wasn't nearly enough for the number of beads, yet every single bead managed to pass through in a precise and orderly. By the time the last bead passed through the first glass wall, the leading ones had already passed the 3rd and even the 4th layer. All the beads moved as if they had a consciousness of their own, swiftly weaving between layers of glass wall. In just a few seconds, soon, the swarm of beads had reached the other side of the last glass wall. Lu Sheng turned to the stunned Sophia, telling her that it was indeed simple. Once the concept was understood, they just needed to pass in sequence. Sophia remained silent, unable to find words. Lu Sheng then looked at the staff and asked, "How many seconds?" The staff, almost reflexively, glanced at the timer and blurted, saying it was exactly 10 seconds. Even the front desk, who had led Lu Sheng in earlier, was left in utter silence. Lu Sheng then inquired if Sophia had understood. Sophia had clearly seen how the nearly 1,000 beads had managed to safely pass through layer upon layer of glass walls to reach the endpoint. Each bead's flight path was evident and clear. But how did Lu Sheng do it? It felt like a magician performing a trick right before her eyes. She could clearly see each of their movements, yet couldn't understand how it was done. Their minds struggled to grasp how nearly 1,000 beads managed to navigate through the intricate holes in just 10 seconds. If it was really done in the way Lu Sheng described, with nearly 1,000 metallic beads, layers of glass walls, and thousands of tiny holes, it would be an astronomical and intricate computational task. The scene they had just witnessed was profoundly shocking and overwhelming for their senses. The room fell silent until the staff snapped to her senses and urgently beckoned the young man to call the guild president over. Inside the president's office, an elderly man wearing a t-shirt and sandals was sitting in front of a computer. His eyes were fixated on the screen. Even as a level 4 psychic master, he couldn't become a gambling god, he mused. The front desk rushed to the office door without even knocking, bursting in. The elderly man didn't look up but inquired why he was so panicked. The young man raced to the president's side. The young man was at a loss for words but recounted everything he had witnessed. The president was engrossed in his game, barely paying attention to the young man's words. The young man urged him to check the surveillance footage. Reluctantly, the president paused his game and pulled up the surveillance. On screen, Lu Sheng was undergoing a psychic power test, the brilliant golden glow emanating from his hands illuminating the entire room. For the first time, the president's expression shifted. Accompanied by the soft hum of the equipment, the breaths of everyone in the room grew tense. Soon, 2 numbers appeared on the display. Psychic strength, 435.87. Psychic purity, 126.02. Everyone stared at the numbers in disbelief, thinking the machine might be malfunctioning. Only the staff understood how terrifying these numbers were. The Psychic Association's purity standard for a level 2 psychic was 1, and even for a level 4 psychic master, it was only 10. 435 psychic strength was shocking, but this purity level is purely impossible. The staff recalled the strongest psychic master here was their president, who was only a level 4 psychic master. Yet the young man before them, with the appearance of a high school student, had a psychic purity that was 12 times that of an average level 4 psychic master. Upon seeing this, the president hurriedly exited his office and rushed into the testing area. He asked the staff to double-check if the equipment was malfunctioning. She reassured the president, stating that the equipment was functioning perfectly as they had just tested 2 individuals before Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng, appearing somewhat puzzled, asked why they were reacting so strongly. Was there an issue with his scores? The president quickly explained that Lu Sheng's results were so astonishing that it was hard for them to believe. He then quietly inquired if Lu Sheng was perhaps the descendant of a level 7 or level 8 psychic master. Lu Sheng shook his head with a smile, stating he didn't come from such an esteemed background. He then inquired if he could proceed to the final test. The president, wiping sweat from his forehead, asked Lu Sheng if participating in the final test was really necessary given his astounding abilities. Lu Sheng just shook his head, remarking that for him, it was merely a simple task. As he said this, he casually glanced towards the glass wall. As soon as the staff began the timer, the iron beads in the room transformed into a dragon-like stream, piercing through the glass effortlessly. Lu Sheng felt he could even go faster. In no time, all the iron beads passed through the final layer of glass. This second attempt was even faster than the last attempt. The staff, trembling, looked at the timer. 4.25 seconds. At that moment, everyone in the room felt as if the air had been sucked out, leaving them breathless. This task was even more difficult than the one Lu Sheng had performed earlier, yet he managed to reduce the time by half. Observing Lu Sheng's effortless demeanor, it was clear that he had not reached his limit. As the president of the Psychic Masters Association, he was well aware of the difficulty of what Lu Sheng had just accomplished. Even he couldn't achieve what Lu Sheng did. The president believed Lu Sheng's ability was approaching the level of a grandmaster's psychic control. He was at a loss for words, overwhelmed by what he had just witnessed. His attitude towards Lu Sheng changed completely, addressing him with deep respect, and even referring to him as Sir. This was a respect for strength, regardless of identity or age. The president decided he would personally craft and present a certificate and badge to Lu Sheng. However, he expressed some difficulty. He could only issue a level 4 psychic master certification here. For a higher level badge, Lu Sheng would need to go to the capital city. Lu Sheng, noting the president's drastic change in demeanor, felt slightly amused. He told the president not to be so anxious. The president is much older than he was. There was no need for such formal titles. In Sophia's eyes, Lu Sheng seemed to be surrounded by an aura of greatness and mystery at that very moment. Beneath his upright and handsome appearance, there seemed to be layers of mist, giving her an indescribably mysterious and majestic feeling. Sophia stammered, asking Lu Sheng how old he was. Lu Sheng replied, he was 18, and he was preparing for the unified examinations as a high school student. He wondered if Sophia thought he was one of those who look young on the outside, but have actually lived for who knows how long. Sophia nodded seriously. That was exactly what she was thinking. Lu Sheng smiled at Sophia, telling her that she should read fewer fantasy novels. Lu Sheng is about to take the unified exam. The Psychic Master certification can help him earn extra points in the exam. That's why he came here specifically for the assessment. Sophia felt a bit dizzy. Today's experience seemed too surreal for her. She looked at Lu Sheng and asked if she had one more chance for the assessment. Should she give it another try? Lu Sheng earnestly replied, telling Sophia that she had the talent. If she is more focused, she can surely pass. He gently lifted her arm, trying to help her relax. Sophia's face turned red instantly, her heart racing. As Lu Sheng instructed her on how to proceed, she didn't hear a word. It was as if time had stopped. Sophia looked at Lu Sheng with a flushed face, her emotions a mixture of feelings. She bit her lip, her heart tumultuous with emotions.